Hi, Mom. You were in the hospital for malnutrition. Weren't you eating properly? I've been sending you money. Yeah, thank you for that. But 60 cents. You know the fee costs more than that, so don't worry about it. 60 cents? What do you mean? I'm broke and I've been living a frugal life, cutting down on food and utility expenses. Eventually, I collapsed from malnutrition. My eldest son, Raymond, has been sending me 60 cents every month. I told him it's not the amount but the thought that counts. I thought I'd been sending you 100 a month. Soon, shocking truths were revealed one after another from Raymond. I am Caroline. I am turning 80 this year. I lost my husband 5 years ago, and now I live alone in an old apartment. Since getting married, I have been a full-time housewife, relying on my own pension and my husband's survivor's pension as my only income. Life is not easy, and I have been cutting corners day by day. Of course, I save on food expenses as well as utilities and water bills, and I barely get by living in a cheap apartment. Today, it has been lightly snowing since morning, but I don't turn on the heater to save electricity. I wear a down jacket and layer warm pants in the house to stave off the cold. My fingers are chapped and bleeding from doing chores with cold water. I have frostbite on my left hand, which is swollen and red-black as I rub my stiff fingertips while cleaning up after lunch. My daughter-in-law, Samantha, comes to visit. Hello, mother-in-law. I brought this week's medicine. It's the usual $80. Samantha brings me medicine every week. Raymond also cares for me, but he's busy as a pharmacist at a large hospital, so Samantha looks after me. A few years ago, Samantha accompanied me to the hospital for checkups, but recently she only delivers the medicine. It's cheaper this way, she says. Honestly, the medicine is a big expense for me, who is broke. However, I am told that stopping the medication will cause discomfort, so I have it delivered every week. Samantha used to be a pharmacist at a hospital like Raymond. However, she quit her job after getting married and now works part-time at a local drugstore. I'm always grateful for your help, Samantha. By the way, do you know anything about the box of rice crackers I had stored in the drawer? The one with the kids' scribbles on the lid. It's been missing since last week. I point to the dresser in the back. Last week, I had Samantha tidy up around the dresser, but the box has been missing ever since. Inside the box, I kept my hard-earned savings, a box of rice crackers. I don't know anything about that. Maybe you put it somewhere and forgot about it. Can you not blame me? Samantha, perhaps hurt by the suspicion, took the money for the medicine and left with an unpleasant look on her face. I can't argue with that. After putting away the medicine, I grabbed my cane and went toward the post office. Today is the end of the month. Since my husband passed away 5 years ago, I have had no other income than my pension. My son Raymond, concerned for me, has been sending me money every month. My bank book, spit out from the ATM as usual, had deposit 60 cents written on it. The amount sent was so little that the transfer fees seemed to cost more, but it's the thought that counts. Though it doesn't help much with daily life, I am grateful for it. After leaving the post office, I headed to my regular greengrocer. Since I visited every week, I became quite familiar with the energetic owner Dane, who is in his 60s. When I went to the store just before closing, I could get unsold or bruised vegetables at a discount. I always went to the store in the evening, targeting those discounts. Today, I got bruised turnips and radishes and wilting spinach. I thanked Dane and went home to pickle all the turnips and radishes in my homemade brine. The secret brine pickles I've been making for years as a hobby and to save money are excellent in both flavor and texture. I had a simple but delicious dinner of spinach and pickles. Lately, my health has been deteriorating. I feel dizzy when I stand up and I get short of breath just from moving a little. My nails and fingertips are also in bad shape. Perhaps my body is weak because I haven't been eating well due to cutting food expenses. I've had health issues before, but I never paid much attention, thinking it was due to age. But recently, the pain in my body is unbearable, and the dizziness is terrible. I tried calling Samantha to see if she could take me to the hospital. The hospital, just for dizziness. Well, I'm old, so it might be inevitable. But I'm worried. I haven't been to the hospital in years. Could you take me for once? But I'm busy, I don't have time. Raymond is working non-stop too. I'm sorry, but can we do it another time? It's not that urgent. Samantha refused to accompany me to the hospital. Even the nearest hospital is quite far from my home. Being broke, I can afford not only the medical fees but even the transportation costs. Oh, and please don't contact Raymond. He's in a crucial period at work. If anything happens, please contact me. Samantha emphasized that and then hung up the phone. I sighed and took my medicine with cold water. One day, as I was chatting with Dane at my usual greengrocer, I was hit by another severe bout of dizziness. Unable to support myself with a cane, I squatted down on the spot. Dane rushed over. "Are you okay?" and peered into my face. The dizziness didn't subside even when I sat down. "I'm just feeling a bit dizzy. Nothing is wrong. I'm fine." As I said that, I tried to stand up forcefully. Suddenly, the world spun around and I fainted. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed. Dane was sitting beside me, receiving an IV drip. I heard the story from Dane. Apparently, after I collapsed at the greengrocer's, he called an ambulance for me. I had slept all night since being brought to the hospital, and it was already bright outside. The doctor explained that I had anemia due to severe malnutrition. Unbeknownst to me, my bones had become hollow, and my body was in a more serious condition than I thought. I was worried about the treatment costs and wanted to leave early, but the doctor told me I had to be hospitalized for a week. "Caroline, I always tell you to eat properly. I was shocked when you suddenly collapsed. Dane had always been concerned about my health. Sorry for making you worry, but I don't have any money." "Didn't you have an eldest son? He's a doctor or something, right? He must be earning a good salary working at a hospital, so he could at least send you some money." "He's a pharmacist. I've been receiving support from him." I smile awkwardly and close my mouth. "I receive a monthly allowance from Raymond, but it's too small to help with my living expenses. With the weekly medicine fee I pay to Samantha, even my pension has been significantly reduced. Dane says I should get more money, but I'm hesitant to accept money earned by others, even if they're family. However, what worries me now is the hospitalization cost. With my barely getting by lifestyle, I can't imagine affording such high medical bills. Also, I'm concerned about my precious rice brine pickles. If I don't stir them every 3 days, they'll go bad." After thanking Dane for returning to the store, I searched for my cell phone to contact Samantha. Looking at the screen, I saw that the battery had died. I don't remember Samantha's number, but I memorized Raymond's because it's similar to my home number. Samantha told me not to contact Raymond, but with things like this, I can't avoid it. I borrowed the hospital phone to call Raymond. "Hello? Oh, thank goodness. It's been a while since we connected, Raymond. It's your mother. Sorry to call you during work." Samantha had forbidden it, but I called Raymond from time to time. I just wanted to hear his cheerful voice, but for some reason, he never answered my calls. Was he too busy with work to answer the phone? Anyway, I was relieved that the phone connected during this crucial time. I thought, who could this be? "It's been a while since you called, Mom. Where are you calling from?" I was reluctant to worry my eldest son, but I admitted I was in the hospital. I briefly explained to the surprised Raymond how I had collapsed and been hospitalized. "What? Malnutrition, Mom? Haven't you been eating properly? I've been sending you money for that reason." "Yes, I'm really grateful for that. Your support means a lot to me, but 60 cents might cost more in fees, so don't worry too much." "60 cents fees? What do you mean?" With a puzzled tone, I told Raymond how I received 60 cents from him every month and that I appreciated the gesture more than the amount. "I thought I was sending more money to Mom," Raymond finally speaks, as if squeezing out the words. "Wait, I'm curious about that too. But you mentioned malnutrition, right? Mom should have been going to the hospital every month, and she should be getting her medicine. Hasn't the doctor said anything until now?" "Yeah, I'm getting the medicine. Samantha delivers it to the house every week. I haven't been to the hospital in years. Lately, I've been having bad dizziness and palpitations, and I wanted to go to the hospital if possible. But Samantha said I'm busy, so maybe next time. Just the medicine every week." Raymond seems to be worried about something as he mumbles on the phone. "Anyway, I know you're busy, but could you please bring me some clothes and the insurance card on your next day off? And I'd like you to mix the rice brine pickles every 3 days, all right? I have the keys to our parents' house, so I'll leave work early today and go there. Don't worry about the hospital bills. I'll be there by evening." Raymond seems strangely preoccupied, but I'm grateful he can come right away. "Thanks. Be sure to wash your hands well and mix the pickles with your bare hands, Mom. I'm here. How are you feeling? Are you okay?" After the call, Raymond shows up in the afternoon. It seemed he left work early. As he organizes the clothes and personal belongings he brought from the house, he asks me in detail about recent events, about the house, my health, the medicine, Samantha. It's like a continuation of this morning's phone call. He also brought my bank book from home, and we opened it to check the contents together. From the date 5 years ago, there's a series of deposit 60-cent entries. Raymond glares at them with a fierce expression. Since this morning's call, Raymond's behavior has been strange. Did something happen at work? I thought he must have been very busy, as I had tried calling him 2 or 3 times a month, but never got through, and he never returned my calls. I feel bad for making him leave work early today. I casually apologize for it, and Raymond is taken aback and asks rapid-fire questions. He quickly takes out his smartphone and starts operating it intently as soon as he hears my story. What's been going on with him? Raymond gazes at the screen for a while, then operates his smartphone again to send a message to Samantha. He then grabs his backpack and says, "I'll be back shortly." He leaves the room, leaving behind a strange sense of unease, but I lie down in bed anyway. That evening, Raymond returns to the room. He puts down his backpack and asks how I'm feeling. After receiving an IV and sleeping in a warm bed for the first time in a while, I feel much better. While snacking on fruit and chatting, Samantha comes into the room. "Oh, mother-in-law, how are you feeling?" "Raymond, you took time off work, huh?" She approaches us with a forced smile and sits in the chair next to Raymond. Raymond didn't reply, looking down and gripping my bank book into his hand. Before I could say anything, Raymond spoke up with a voice lower than usual. "Samantha, Mom's malnourished. Do you know why?" Samantha stayed silent. There was a tense atmosphere. Raymond turned to face Samantha, glaring at her head-on. "Mom's been broke for so long, barely able to buy food. It's not just food, she's been cutting back on electricity and gas, living on the edge for years. When I went to her place today, there wasn't even a heater in the dead of winter." "Well, wait, Raymond, we're in a hospital. What happened? It's not Samantha's fault. There's no money." I tried to calm down the yelling eldest son while hiding my frostbitten, swollen, red-black hand. Ignoring me, Raymond continued with an angry tone. "I asked you to send $1,100 to Mom every month, right? But she's only received 60 cents for the last 5 years, Samantha. What's going on?" Saying that, Raymond first my bank book at Samantha. On every page, there was the number 60 cents. I couldn't believe my ears. I don't remember ever receiving $1,100. The money from Raymond was always 60 cents. Samantha, cornered by the furious Raymond, looked away from the bank book and fell silent. "That's not all. I give you $150 every week for Mom's medical expenses and medication, right? You said you were using the leftover money to buy her necessities and groceries, but they were only withered vegetables in her room. The fridge was empty." "Be quiet. I gave her the medicine." "What kind of medicine? Without a doctor's prescription, you decided to prescribe it yourself." "All that was in Mom's house were basic vitamins. You bought some random vitamins at the drugstore where you work, put them in a medicine-like bag, and handed them over, didn't you? What were you thinking?" Raymond's tone was stern. "I had no choice. I needed the money," Samantha yelled back to the furious Raymond. Even though this was a private room, we were still in a hospital. As I was shocked by the contents of the eldest son and his wife's conversation, I felt anxious. "You needed money, so you stole Mom's precious savings from her dresser too." With that, Raymond pulled a crushed box out of his backpack. On the lid was a drawing of my husband and me, drawn by Raymond when he was a child. It was the box of rice crackers I had been searching for the last week. I, too, was so shocked that I gasped. "What? No way." I didn't want to believe it either, but I found it while searching through our trash after you said it disappeared a week ago. "He really did it, didn't you?" Faced with undeniable proof, Samantha turned pale and lost her words. "So what did you do with the $250,000 that was in this box, huh? And the $1,100 you were supposed to send to Mom every month? The hospital fees and the medicine fees, where did it all go?" Raymond demanded. "Stop nagging, there's no money left." Samantha, who had been trembling as she stared at the box, eventually stood up, knocking over her chair, and yelled back defiantly, "It's all your fault anyway. You always ignored me and focused on your mother. Ben is way better than your husband." "Huh. Ben? He's the coolest host at the club around here. I've been supporting him, and soon he'll be #1. He said he's saving all the money I've given him for our life together." Samantha excitedly continued talking. Both Raymond and I stared at her blankly. I didn't quite understand, but it seemed she had fallen for a man and was providing him with money. Apparently, she needed a lot of money for that. All right, Samantha, I get it. Let's get a divorce right here for the sake of your life with this bang guy. Raymond quietly said this and took out the divorce papers and his seal from his backpack, placing them on the side table. I never want to see your face again. Sign the divorce papers here, pack your things tonight, and leave the house. I'll stay at the hospital tonight. Raymond's voice was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. What? Don't be so selfish. You can't just suddenly. Samantha, do you even realize what you've done? Faking medicine, stealing money. If you don't want a divorce, we can go straight to the police instead. Samantha, who had been so confident, flinched under Raymond's intimidating gaze and eventually started making tearful excuses. I had no choice. My part-time job wasn't enough. I took a little from the money you sent and the medicine fees, but I know it was wrong. Besides, neither you nor your mother noticed for years, right? You both share some responsibility. Enough. I don't know when you did it, but you went through my phone and blocked Mom's number. You even told her not to contact me, didn't you? You deliberately kept us apart and exploited her without getting caught. Raymond's anger was palpable as he slammed the divorce papers on a table with his fist. Samantha flinched. Anyway, Samantha, this is goodbye. I'll make sure you pay back every penny you've taken from us. Remember that. If you don't, we're going to the police. Raymond's voice was resolute. Finally realizing the gravity of her actions, Samantha couldn't say anything and signed the divorce papers with tears in her eyes. Samantha left the house that night, as Raymond had told her to, almost like she was running away. In exchange for not reporting her to the police, Raymond made sure to demand repayment of the money she'd taken, the amount she'd taken for the last 5 years since my husband's death, including the money for living expenses and medicine. In total, it amounted to over $900,000. I was shocked. Samantha later lost contact with the host she had given so much money to and went berserk in the club, getting herself banned. Bad rumors seemed to spread from nowhere, and before she knew it, they reached her part-time job, resulting in her being fired. With her income gone and not a penny to her name, Samantha couldn't rent an apartment and had to spend some time sleeping in internet cafes. But what happened to her after that is unknown. I had almost given up on getting back the money Samantha had taken. She had disappeared. But her family, who learned of the situation, decided to repay the debt in small amounts on her behalf. It might be difficult to recover the full amount of stolen money, but I was happy with their gesture. After being discharged from the hospital, I decided to leave with Raymond. We're living peacefully together in the house Samantha left, just the two of us. I had been forced to live a difficult life, being exploited by Samantha, but now, in our warm, comfortable home, I'm eating well, and my health has improved. Dane, the greengrocer who has always been worried about me, finally felt relieved. I still continue to make my specialty pickles. I used to do it just as a hobby and for saving money, but now, with Raymond's help, we're sharing information on how to make good pickles and delicious pickle recipes. In a few years, my pickle channel became hugely popular, possibly because an 80-year-old content creator was a novelty. And now, it brings in an amazing income. I had always thought that making money was impossible for me as I had never worked as a full-time employee. But even I can be useful to others. More than earning money, I've come to know the happiness of bringing joy to others and now live a fulfilling life every day.
The envelope was heavy in my hands, cream-colored and expensive, the kind of paper that whispers promises of good things. My name was written in familiar handwriting, Lucia's looping script that always made me think of our college days, passing notes in the back of lecture halls. I stood on the porch of what should have been my house. My dream house. The one I'd spent 8 years teaching English in Seoul, Bangkok, and Dubai to save for. The one with the blue door and the garden space I'd already mentally filled with herbs and flowers. The one I'd told Lucia about over countless video calls, showing her listings, asking her opinion on neighborhoods while she nodded enthusiastically. "Open it outside," the real estate agent had said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Graham thought you might want a moment." Ms. Graham, Lucia Graham, my best friend for 15 years. I tore open the envelope, my fingers trembling slightly. The paper inside was the same heavy stock, folded precisely. "Louisa, I know this will come as a shock. I've purchased the house you were interested in. I want you to know it wasn't planned. When I came to visit the neighborhood last month, I fell in love with it too. When your financing hit that snag, I couldn't bear to see someone else get it. I know you'll understand eventually. This way it stays in the family. We can laugh about this someday, I promise. I've left the keys with Marjorie. The guest room is yours anytime. Love, always. Lucia. The letter crumpled in my fist. My throat tightened as I looked up across the tree-lined street. And there she was. Lucia, standing on the porch of my house, waving like she was welcoming me home. Her blonde hair caught the sunlight, her smile wide and expectant. I forced my face into something resembling normal and waved back, though my hand felt disconnected from my body. "Would you like to go inside?" Marjorie asked, jingling the keys. "Ms. Graham has arranged for the utilities to be on." "No," I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "I think I need some time." "Of course." She handed me the keys with a sympathetic look. "Take all the time you need." I nodded, unable to speak further, and walked back to my rental car. I could feel Lucia watching me, probably waiting for me to turn around, to run across the street and hug her, to tell her it was fine, that I understood. I didn't turn around. In the safety of my car, I let my forehead rest against the steering wheel. The leather was cool against my skin, grounding me as my mind raced through the implications. The financing snag had been minor, a 2-week delay at most. Lucia knew that. She'd known everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucia. "Are you okay? Come over when you're ready. We should talk." I started the car without responding. The drive to my temporary apartment was a blur, my mind replaying every conversation we'd had about the house. How she'd asked to see the listing. How she'd suggested visiting to help me decide. How she'd been so interested in my mortgage broker's name. It wasn't until I was inside my sterile, rented space that I allowed myself to feel the full force of it. I sank to the floor, back against the door, and finally let the tears come. Not just for the house, though that loss cut deep, but for the friendship I now realized had been built on sand. 8 years of saving, of teaching English to corporate executives and their children, of living in tiny apartments and sending money home, of missing funerals and weddings because I couldn't afford the flights. All for that house. My house. My phone buzzed again. And again. I ignored it, watching the notifications pile up. "Louisa, please talk to me." "It's not what you think. I did this for us." I turned my phone off and stared at the blank wall opposite me. The rage building inside me was unfamiliar, hot and clarifying. I'd always been the understanding one, the one who made peace, who saw the best in people, especially in Lucia. Not anymore. I pulled myself up from the floor and moved to the small desk by the window. Rain had started to fall, pattering against the glass in an irregular rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I opened my laptop and began to type. First, I needed information. About the sale, about property laws, about Lucia's finances, about the neighborhood committee she'd mentioned was so exclusive, about the interior designer, Iris something, she'd bragged about hiring. Then I needed a plan. Because Lucia was right about one thing. This house was going to stay in the family. Just not her family. I opened a new document and titled it, "Getting My House Back." My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment before I began to type, each keystroke a tiny act of war. By the time the rain stopped, I had the beginnings of a strategy. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't nice, but then neither was betrayal. I finally turned my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and a voicemail from Lucia, her voice artificially bright. "Lou, I know you're upset, but when you calm down, you'll see this is for the best. Call me when you're ready to be adults about this. Love you." I deleted the voicemail and opened my contacts. It was time to make some calls of my own. Rain pounded against my apartment window as I stared at my phone. 3 days since I discovered Lucia's betrayal, and the calls hadn't stopped. Friends asking why I wasn't returning her messages. Mutual acquaintances wondering if we were still on for dinner next week. as if my world hadn't just imploded. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Iris Mitchell. The interior designer Lucia had bragged about hiring. The one with the waiting list a mile long. The one who'd transformed the homes of local celebrities and tech executives. My finger hovered over the call button. This was crossing a line. But then again, so was stealing your best friend's dream house. I pressed call. Iris Mitchell Design. The voice was crisp, professional. Hi, I'd like to speak with Iris, please. It's about the Graham property on Maple Street. A pause. May I ask who's calling? I took a deep breath. Louisa Carter. I'm a close friend of Lucia's. Another pause. One moment. My heart hammered as I waited. This was either going to work or blow up spectacularly. This is Iris. The voice was warmer now, curious. Hi, Iris. I'm calling about the house on Maple Street. Lucia suggested I reach out to you directly about some of the design elements we've been discussing. Oh, surprise colored her voice. Lucia didn't mention a consultant. I laughed lightly, the sound almost convincing. That's Lucia for you, always forgetting the details. We've been planning this house for years, actually. I just got back from overseas. I see. Iris's tone shifted slightly. Well, we're still in the preliminary stages. Perhaps we could meet to discuss your input. I have time tomorrow afternoon. Perfect. Your office at 2? See you then. I ended the call and let out the breath I'd been holding. Step 1. Infiltrate. My hands shook as I wrote the appointment in my planner. This wasn't me, scheming, lying. But the alternative was accepting defeat, and I'd spent too many years fighting for this dream. My phone buzzed with a text from Aiden. How are you holding up? Aiden, my rock through every crisis since college. The one person who knew exactly how much the house meant to me. Not great. Can you meet for coffee? His response was immediate. Corner cafe. 30 Mint. The cafe was busy with the afternoon crowd, but Aiden had secured our usual corner table. He stood when he saw me, his tall frame unfolding as he pulled me into a hug. You look terrible, he said, but his eyes were kind. Thanks. I managed a weak smile as I slid into my seat. That's exactly what a girl wants to hear. He pushed a mug toward me. Already ordered your usual. The familiar scent of chai tea rose in a comforting cloud. You're a lifesaver. So? He said after I'd taken a few sips. What's the plan? I raised an eyebrow. Who says I have a plan? I've known you for 12 years, Lou. You always have a plan. I sighed and leaned forward. I'm meeting with her interior designer tomorrow, pretending to be a consultant. Aiden's eyes widened. That's bold. It's just the beginning. I pulled out my notebook and slid it across the table. I've been doing research. He flipped through the pages, his expression growing more concerned with each turn. Lou, some of this is... looking into zoning violations is one thing, but hacking her email? Not hacking, I corrected. Eric from IT said he could help me recover some of our old conversations, ones where she specifically acknowledged the house was my dream, not hers. And what exactly will that prove? I stared into my tea. I don't know yet, but it's something. Aiden closed the notebook. Have you tried just talking to her? Maybe there's an explanation. An explanation for buying the house out from under me? My voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. I lowered it to a harsh whisper. She knew what she was doing, Aiden. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm on your side, always. I just don't want to see you become someone you're not because of this. Maybe I need to become someone else, I said quietly. Someone who doesn't get walked all over. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Iris. Something's come up. Need to reschedule our meeting. Also, Lucia mentioned you might be reaching out. Said there was some confusion about the property. Let's clear that up when we meet. My stomach dropped. She knows. Who knows what? Aiden asked. I showed him the text. Lucia must have called her. She's on to me. Aiden squeezed my hand. So change tactics. You don't need to be sneaky about this. Don't I? I pulled my hand away. Because being honest and straightforward has worked so well for me so far. As if on cue, the cafe door opened and Lucia walked in. She was wearing a cream-colored coat I'd helped her pick out last winter, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She scanned the room, and when her eyes landed on our table, her face lit up with that familiar smile, the one that had always made me feel like the most important person in her world. "Lou!" she called, weaving between tables toward us. "Thank God! I've been trying to reach you for days." I felt Aiden tense beside me, ready to intervene if needed. But this was my battle. "I've been busy," I said, my voice steady despite the rage boiling just beneath the surface. "House hunting," her smile faltered. "About that, we really need to talk." "Do we?" I stood, gathering my things. "Because I think you've said everything that matters in that letter." "Lou, please! The house was everything to me, Lucia. You knew that." She reached for my arm. "That's why I did it. I couldn't let you make such a huge mistake. The foundation is cracked, Lou. The inspection report." I froze. "What inspection report?" Something flickered across her face. Triumph? Relief? "The one you never bothered to read. That's what I've been trying to tell you." "What inspection report?" I repeated, my voice hollow. Lucia pulled a folded document from her purse and placed it on the table between us. The paper was creased from multiple readings, coffee-stained at one corner. "The one your inspector filed 3 weeks ago," she said. "The one that shows the foundation is compromised. The one that estimates repairs at nearly $100,000. I stared at the document, my name clearly printed at the top. "I never saw this. Your real estate agent was supposed to give it to you." Lucia's voice softened. "When I realized you were still moving forward, I knew you hadn't seen it. I couldn't let you sink your life savings into a money pit." Aiden reached for the report, scanning it with a frown. "This looks legitimate, Lou." My head was spinning. "So you bought a house with a cracked foundation? That makes no sense. I have the money to fix it. You don't." Lucia slid into the chair across from me. "I was trying to protect you." "By going behind my back?" The words tasted bitter. "By not telling me what you found?" "I tried. I called you the day I saw this. You were in Dubai, remember? The connection was terrible, and you were so excited about finalizing the deal." She sighed. "I made a split-second decision. Maybe it was wrong, but my intentions—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop." The cafe seemed too small suddenly, the air too thick. I needed to think, and I couldn't do it with Lucia's earnest eyes on me, with Aiden's concerned glances. "I need to verify this," I said finally. "I need to talk to my agent." "Of course." Lucia nodded eagerly. "And then we can figure this out together. The house can still be yours eventually. Maybe we co-own until the repairs are done, or—" I said I need to verify it. I stood abruptly. "Aiden, can you—" "I'll drive you home," he said, understanding immediately. Lucia reached for my hand. "Lou, please don't shut me out. Not again." Again. The word hung between us, heavy with history. The 6 months after my mother died, when I disappeared into grief, ignoring her calls. The year in Seoul, when I'd been too busy building my new life to maintain our weekly video chats. "I'll call you," I said, not meeting her eyes. "After I talk to my agent." Marjorie's office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful real estate agent. Tasteful, expensive, designed to convey trust and competence. She greeted me with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Louisa, what a lovely surprise." "Not really a surprise," I said, placing the inspection report on her desk. "I called and made an appointment." Her eyes flicked to the document, then back to my face. "What can I help you with today? You can explain why I never saw this report. The one that shows the house I was about to buy needs $100,000 in foundation repairs." Marjorie's smile didn't waver. "I sent that report to you 3 weeks ago, by email and certified mail." "I never received either." Well, that's concerning. She turned to her computer, tapping keys with manicured nails. Let me check. Yes, here's the email. Sent on the 15th. And I have confirmation the letter was delivered to your apartment building on the 17th. My apartment building, where packages routinely disappeared, where the mail system was notoriously unreliable. Show me the email, I demanded. She turned the screen toward me. There it was, sent to my personal email, not the work address I'd been using for all our communications. You sent it to the wrong email, I said, my voice tight. We've been using my work email for everything. A flicker of genuine concern crossed her face. I'm so sorry. I must have used the address from your initial inquiry. And you never followed up? Never called to confirm I'd received it? For a report this serious? Marjorie's professional veneer cracked slightly. I assumed when you continued with the purchase that you decided to handle the repairs yourself. Many buyers do. Many buyers with an extra $100,000 lying around? I laughed bitterly. Did Lucia Graham see this report? Her hesitation told me everything. How? I pressed. How did she get access to my inspection report? Marjorie shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Graham is a long-time client. When she expressed interest in the property, I may have mentioned the inspection findings. In general terms, of course. In general terms, I repeated. And then she made an all-cash offer, knowing I'd hit a financing delay. I can't discuss another client's transaction details. I stood, gathering the report. You won't have to. I'll be filing a complaint with the Real Estate Commission. Expect to hear from them. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what I'd learned. Marjorie had screwed up. The house really did have serious issues. And Lucia had still gone behind my back, had still made decisions about my life without consulting me, had still taken something that was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Aiden. Any news? I started typing, then stopped. What could I say? That Lucia might have been trying to help? That I'd spent days plotting revenge against someone who thought she was protecting me? Another text came through, this one from Lucia. Whatever Marjorie told you, remember she's covering her own mistakes. Call me when you're ready to talk about solutions. Solutions? As if this were a simple problem to solve, not a fundamental breach of trust. I started the car and headed toward the one place I needed to see for myself. The house on Maple Street. My house. Lucia's house. The house with the cracked foundation. As I turned onto the street, I spotted a familiar figure on the front porch. Not Lucia, but Iris Mitchell, the interior designer. She was examining the front door, making notes on a tablet. I parked across the street and watched her work, an idea forming. Maybe I didn't need to fight Lucia for a flawed house. Maybe what I needed was leverage, something to ensure she never blindsided me again. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Milena, it's Louisa. I need your advice. Milena's apartment hadn't changed in the 5 years since I'd last visited. Books still lined every wall, plants crowded the windows, and the scent of cardamom and cloves hung in the air. My former English professor sat across from me, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a loose bun, her dark eyes studying me over reading glasses. So, she said, setting down her teacup, you want to use what you know about this designer to... What exactly? I shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. Not blackmail, just leverage. Louisa. My name in her mouth sounded like disappointment. I know how it sounds, I admitted. But Lucia crossed a line. She went behind my back, made decisions about my life without consulting me. Like you're planning to do to her? The question hit like a slap. I stared into my tea, watching the leaves swirl at the bottom of the cup. It's different, I said finally. Yea, is it? Milena leaned forward. When you came to me all those years ago, desperate to escape your life here, what did I tell you? That running away doesn't solve problems, I recited. It just changes the scenery. And revenge doesn't heal betrayal. It just gives you something to focus on besides the pain. I set my cup down with more force than necessary. So I'm just supposed to accept what she did? Let her keep the house? I didn't say that. Milena's voice softened. But there's a difference between standing up for yourself and becoming the thing that hurt you. My phone buzzed. Another text from Lucia. I ignored it. What would you do? I asked. Milena considered this. I'd start by having an honest conversation. Not about the house, but about the friendship. Because this isn't really about property, is it? The truth of her words settled heavily in my chest. This wasn't just about the house. It was about years of feeling second best to Lucia's needs, about the pattern of her making decisions for my own good without consulting me. And if the conversation doesn't work, I asked, then you decide what matters more, winning or keeping your integrity. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Now, tell me about this interior designer. What makes you think she has secrets worth leveraging? I parked down the street from Iris's office the next morning, watching as she unlocked the front door. My conversation with Milena had left me conflicted, but I wasn't ready to abandon my plan entirely. Not yet. Iris's design firm occupied a converted Victorian in the Arts District. Through the large front windows, I could see her moving around, setting up for the day. I checked my watch, 15 minutes until her first appointment, according to the schedule Eric had helped me access. My phone rang. Aiden. Where are you? He asked when I answered. I stopped by your apartment. Following up on something, I said vaguely. Something or someone? His tone was knowing. Lou, tell me you're not stalking Iris Mitchell. Not stalking, observing. He sighed. This isn't you. The Lou I know doesn't lurk in cars watching people. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. The words came out sharper than intended. Maybe I don't. He agreed quietly. The Lou I know values honesty above all else. The Lou I know would confront problems head-on, not scheme around them. The Lou you know got her dream house stolen by her best friend. And that sucks. It really does. But this path you're on, it leads somewhere dark, Lou. I watched as a client entered Iris's office, a tall woman with a designer handbag and confident stride. I have to go. Lou! I ended the call and got out of my car. It was now or never. The bell above the door chimed as I entered the design studio. Iris looked up from her desk, recognition flickering across her face. Louisa, she said, her tone carefully neutral. I wasn't expecting you. I was hoping we could talk. I glanced at the client, who was browsing fabric samples. Privately. Iris hesitated, then nodded. Jenny, would you mind giving us a moment? Help yourself to coffee in the back room. Once we were alone, Iris gestured to a chair. I assume this is about the Maple Street property. Indirectly. I sat, maintaining eye contact. It's about your business practices. Her expression hardened. Excuse me? 3 years ago, you were involved in a lawsuit with a client named Darren. He claimed you were taking kickbacks from contractors, inflating their bids and pocketing the difference. Iris's face paled slightly. That case was dismissed because Darren couldn't afford to continue, not because you were innocent. I leaned forward. I have copies of emails between you and Premier Construction discussing your consulting fees. Where did you get those? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Does it matter? I kept my tone even, though my heart was racing. What matters is that the licensing board would find them very interesting. Iris stood abruptly, moving to close the blinds on the front windows. When she turned back to me, her composure had returned. What do you want? The question hung between us. What did I want? Revenge? The house? Or something else entirely? I want you to drop Lucia as a client, I said finally, and I want information. Information about what? About why she really bought that house. Because I don't believe it was to protect me from a bad investment. Iris studied me for a long moment. You two have been friends for how long? 15 years? And you're willing to threaten me, potentially ruin my career, to get back at her? Put that way, it sounded petty, vindictive, not like me at all. I'm willing to do what it takes to understand what happened, I amended, and to make sure it never happens again. Iris sank back into her chair. Lucia came to me 6 months ago, long before you had an offer on the house. 6 months! My mind raced. That's impossible. I only found the listing 3 months ago. She knew about it before it was listed. She's been planning to buy that house for a while, Louisa. Iris hesitated. And it has nothing to do with the foundation. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Then why? That's something you need to ask her. Iris reached for her phone. Now, are you going to report me, or can we both agree this conversation never happened? I stood on shaky legs. I need to think. As I reached the door, Iris called after me. For what it's worth, I think you're asking the right questions, just not in the right way. Outside, I leaned against my car, struggling to breathe. 6 months. Lucia had known about the house for 6 months, before I'd even found it, before there was any inspection report. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk about Lucia. Meet me at Riverfront Park, North Entrance, 3 p.m. Eric's. Riverfront Park was crowded with afternoon joggers and parents pushing strollers. I scanned the north entrance, spotting Eric on a bench overlooking the water. His lanky frame was hunched over a laptop, dark hair falling across his forehead as he typed. This is cryptic, even for IT guys, I said, sitting beside him. Eric glanced up, his eyes darting nervously around us before returning to his screen. I found something you should see. About Lucia? He nodded, angling the laptop toward me. I recovered those emails you asked for, but I found something else, something weird. The screen showed a series of email exchanges between Lucia and someone named Marcus. I skimmed the first few messages, my confusion growing. Who's Marcus? Property developer, specializes in historic renovations. Eric pointed to a line in one of the emails. See this? They're discussing the Maple Street house, from 8 months ago. My stomach clenched. 8 months? That's... Before it was even listed for sale. Before you ever mentioned it to her. Eric scrolled down. And look at this one. The email was dated just 2 weeks ago. Lucia. The City Council approved the rezoning request yesterday. Once we secure the remaining properties on the block, we can move forward with the development plan. Your investment in 1422 Maple puts us at 80% ownership of the target area. The foundation issue is a blessing in disguise. It gives us legitimate grounds to demolish rather than preserve. Congratulations on your foresight. This will be the development deal of the decade. Marcus. I read it twice, my hands growing cold. She's planning to tear it down? For some development project? Eric nodded grimly. The whole block, eventually. Look at the attachment. He opened a PDF, architectural renderings of a modern mixed-use complex, retail spaces on the ground floor, luxury apartments above, where my house, where the entire historic neighborhood currently stood. She lied, I whispered, about everything. There's more. Eric hesitated. She's been monitoring your emails. That's why I wanted to meet in person. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. What? There's a forwarding rule on your personal account. Everything gets copied to an address I traced back to her. It's been active for at least a year. A year? Every email I'd sent or received, every conversation about the house, about my plans, about my finances. Why would she? I couldn't finish the question. Eric closed his laptop. Money, the development plan mentions expected returns of 300% for early investors. I stood abruptly, needing to move, to breathe. I have to go. Louisa, wait. Eric caught my arm. There's something else you should know. She's not doing this alone. There are other investors. Who? His eyes met mine. Aiden's name is on the investor list. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. Aiden, my rock, my confidant, the person I trusted most after Lucia. both betraying me. Night had fallen by the time I found myself outside Aiden's apartment building. Lights glowed warmly behind his third-floor windows. I sat in my car, watching shadows move across the blinds. Was he alone? Was Lucia there? Were they laughing about how easily I'd been manipulated? My phone buzzed with a text from him. "I know you're outside. Come up." Of course he knew. He probably had my phone tracked too. The elevator ride to his floor felt endless. Each step down the hallway required conscious effort. When I knocked, the door opened immediately. Aiden stood there, concern etched on his face. "Lou, what's going on? You've been sitting outside for 20 minutes. I pushed past him into the apartment. "Tell me about the development project." He froze, color draining from his face. "What? Don't." My voice shook with rage. "Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. The project that's going to tear down my house, the whole neighborhood, the one you and Lucia invested in." Aiden closed the door slowly. "How did you find out?" "Does it matter? You lied to me, both of you." "It's not what you think." He moved toward me, hands raised placatingly. "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Explain how my two closest friends conspired behind my back to destroy my dream." "We were trying to protect you." The words burst from him. "That neighborhood is dying, Lou. The development is inevitable. We wanted to make sure you didn't sink your life savings into a house that would be worthless in 2 years. So you decided to profit from it instead? Without telling me?" "I wanted to tell you." He ran a hand through his hair. "Lucia thought it would be better to wait until after." After what? After you'd secured all the properties? After demolition began?" I laughed bitterly. "When exactly was the right time to mention you were destroying my dream house?" Aiden sank onto the couch. "It's complicated, Lou." "It's really not." I remained standing, needing the physical advantage. "You chose money over honesty, over me. That's not fair." He looked up, his eyes pleading. "I invested because Lucia convinced me it was the only way to ensure you got something out of this. The returns would have more than paid for a better house in a better neighborhood." "But it wasn't your decision to make." The words tore from my throat. "It was mine. My life, my choice, my dream." "Lou?" "No." I stepped back. "I trusted you, both of you, and you treated me like a child who couldn't make her own decisions. We were trying to help. By lying, by spying on my emails, by manipulating me." Each question felt like ripping off a bandage, exposing raw wounds beneath. "That's not help, Aiden. That's control." He stood, reaching for me. "Please, just listen." I backed away. "I'm done listening to lies." As I turned to leave, he called after me. "What are you going to do?" I paused at the door, a cold clarity settling over me. What I should have done from the beginning, fight back. Outside, my phone rang. "Lucia." I answered with steady hands. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "I know you've been digging. It's time you heard the whole truth." "Fine," I replied. "Tomorrow, at the house, noon." "Lou!" "And Lucia? Bring the property documents. All of them." I didn't sleep. Instead, I spread documents across my apartment floor. Emails Eric had recovered, property records I'd requested from the county clerk, zoning applications filed under Marcus's development company. By dawn, I had a clearer picture of what I was facing, a meticulously planned project with powerful backers and millions at stake. And at the center of it all, Lucia, my best friend. My phone buzzed with a text from Milena. "Whatever you're planning for today, remember who you are." Who was I? The question echoed as I showered and dressed. The person I'd been a week ago, trusting, forgiving, conflict avoidant, seemed like a stranger now. That Louisa would never confront her best friend. That Louisa would swallow her hurt and move on. But that Louisa didn't know what betrayal really felt like. I arrived at the house 30 minutes early, parking across the street to gather my thoughts. The blue door that had once represented my future now seemed to mock me. I'd imagined myself walking through it thousands of times, coming home to a place that was truly mine. A taxi pulled up, and Stephen stepped out. My stomach dropped. Stephen, the fellow English teacher I'd met in Bangkok 3 years ago. The one who'd followed his own betrayal to a dark place I'd promised myself I'd never go. "What are you doing here?" I asked as he approached my car. He leaned down to the window, his familiar crooked smile not reaching his eyes. "Aiden called me, said you might need a friend who understands." "Aiden has no right to be worried about you." Stephen opened my car door. "Come on, let's walk." Reluctantly, I joined him on the sidewalk. We strolled in silence for a minute before he spoke again. "Remember what I told you in Bangkok about my business partner?" I nodded. Stephen's partner had stolen his investment, leaving him bankrupt and stranded in Thailand. "I spent 2 years plotting revenge," he continued. "Followed him to Singapore, gathered dirt, nearly destroyed his new business." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "Want to know what I got for all that effort?" "Justice," I suggested. "An ulcer, depression, and the realization that I'd wasted 2 years of my life on someone who'd forgotten about me within months." His eyes held mine. "Revenge is a poison you drink yourself, Lou." "This isn't about revenge," I insisted. "It's about standing up for myself." "Is it?" Stephen glanced toward the house. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to burn down your life to spite Lucia." "She betrayed me." "Yes, she did." He nodded. "And that's on her. What you do next, that's on you." A sleek black car pulled up to the house. Lucia stepped out, dressed impeccably as always, a portfolio tucked under her arm. She spotted us and hesitated before walking to the front door. "I have to do this," I said. Stephen squeezed my shoulder. "Just remember, there's a difference between confronting someone and destroying them. One leaves room for you to heal. The other—" He shook his head. "The other leaves nothing but ashes." He walked away, leaving me alone with his words echoing in my mind. I took a deep breath and crossed the street. Lucia opened the door before I could knock. The house smelled of fresh paint and new carpeting. Renovations had already begun. "You're early," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "So are you." We stood awkwardly in the entryway, 15 years of friendship suddenly insufficient for this moment. "I brought the documents," she finally said, gesturing to the portfolio on a small table. "Everything about the development project." I moved past her into what would have been the living room. The space was empty except for 2 folding chairs facing each other. "Expecting a showdown?" I asked, nodding toward the chairs. "Expecting a conversation." Lucia remained by the door. "One that's long overdue." I sat, crossing my arms. "So talk." She joined me, placing the portfolio between us. "First, I want to say I'm sorry. Not for buying the house. I still believe that was the right call, but for how I did it, for not being honest with you." "Why?" The question contained multitudes. Why lie? Why betray me? Why this house? The development project started a year ago. Marcus approached me about investing. He needed someone with connections to local property owners. She opened the portfolio, revealing maps and plans. "This neighborhood is prime real estate, Lou. The returns will be astronomical." "And that justifies lying to me?" "No." She met my gaze directly. "Nothing justifies that. But when you told me you were interested in this specific house," she sighed. "I panicked. We already had commitments from most of the block. This was the last property we needed." "So you bought it out from under me." "I tried to steer you toward other neighborhoods first. Remember those listings I sent? The ones you dismissed without even looking?" I did remember. I'd been so fixated on this house, this street. "The foundation issues are real," she continued. That wasn't a lie. "But yes, we plan to demolish and rebuild regardless." "And monitoring my emails? Was that part of your protection too?" Lucia flinched. "That was Marcus's idea. After you mentioned looking at properties in this area, I should have said no. But you didn't." The betrayal still stung, sharp and fresh. "You invaded my privacy, you and Aiden both." "Aiden didn't know about the emails," she said quickly. "He only invested because I convinced him it would help you in the long run." I laughed bitterly. Everyone making decisions about my life except me. I know how it looks. Do you? I stood, unable to remain still. Do you know what it's like to discover the two people you trust most have been manipulating you? Planning to profit from your disappointment? That's not fair. None of this is fair, my voice echoed in the empty room. I spent 8 years, Lucia, saving for this, working jobs I hated in countries where I knew no one, missing funerals and weddings and birthdays, all for this house. And you would have lost everything when the development went through. She stood to face me. The neighborhood would have changed around you. Property values would have plummeted during construction, then skyrocketed beyond what you could afford in taxes. That should have been my choice to make. You're right. The admission seemed to deflate her. You're right. And I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you, but I was controlling you. Just like my mother, I finished. The realization hit like a physical blow. You became exactly what I was trying to escape. Lucia winced. I never meant to, but you did. I moved to the window, looking out at the street. So what now? The development moves forward? You get rich, and I get what? Your apology? You get this. She pulled a document from the portfolio and held it out. 20% of my investment share. It's already done. The paperwork was filed yesterday. I stared at the document without taking it. You think you can buy me off? I think I can make this right. Her voice cracked slightly. I think I can give you a future instead of a money pit. The returns on this investment will buy you any house you want, Lou. A better one. It was never about the house itself. My throat tightened. It was about having something that was mine, something no one could take away. I know. Lucia set the document on the chair. And I took that from you. I can't undo it, but I can try to make amends. The front door opened before I could respond. Aiden's voice called from the entryway. Lou? Lucia? We need to talk. He appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Marcus is on his way, with the demolition permits. Lucia paled. That's impossible. The community review period doesn't end for another month. He expedited it. Aiden looked at me. I'm sorry, Lou. I just found out. They're starting demolition tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word echoed in my head as I looked around the room that should have been my living room, in the house that should have been my home. So that's it? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Game over? Not necessarily. Aiden stepped fully into the room. There's still one option left, but it's risky. What option? Lucia and I asked simultaneously. The historical preservation clause. His eyes met mine. The one you found in the original deed. The historical preservation clause? Lucia stared at Aiden. What are you talking about? I moved to the window, heart pounding. It was in the original property records, a covenant from 1923 stating that the house cannot be demolished due to its historical significance. That's impossible, Lucia shook her head. Marcus's team would have found it. They did. Aiden pulled out his phone, showing us an email. They found it and buried it. I discovered it when I was reviewing the title documents last night. Outside, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out, followed by two others carrying briefcases. Marcus, Lucia whispered. We don't have much time, Aiden said urgently. Lou, do you still have those property records you requested? I nodded, pulling folded papers from my bag. The original deed and covenant. But will it be enough? They clearly have connections at the city. It will be if we can get it to the right people before demolition starts. Aiden took the papers, scanning them quickly. The Historical Preservation Society has an emergency injunction process specifically for situations like this. Lucia grabbed her phone. I'll call my lawyer. Your lawyer works for Marcus, I reminded her. She paused, then nodded. You're right. We need someone independent. The front door opened. Heavy footsteps approached. Ladies! Marcus's voice was smooth as oil as he entered the room. I see Aiden's joined our little gathering. How convenient. He was taller than I'd expected, with silver hair and the confident stance of someone used to getting his way. The two men flanking him remained silent, watchful. Marcus! Lucia stepped forward. We need to talk about the demolition schedule. Nothing to discuss. He smiled thinly. Permits are approved. Work begins tomorrow at 8 a.m. There's a problem with that plan, I said, finding my voice. This house is protected by a historical covenant. Marcus's smile didn't waver. That old thing? It was invalidated years ago. The paperwork's already been processed. Invalidated how? Aiden challenged. The covenant requires approval from the Historical Society Board to be overturned. There's no record of that happening. A flicker of annoyance crossed Marcus's face. These technical details are hardly worth discussing. The project is moving forward. Not if we file an emergency injunction, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. And who exactly is we? Marcus looked between us. Lucia is my business partner. Aiden is an investor. And you? His eyes narrowed. You have no standing whatsoever. Actually, Lucia interrupted, I've transferred 20% of my shares to Louisa. She's an investor now, too. Marcus's composure slipped momentarily. You did what? It's done, she said firmly. Paperwork filed yesterday. That's a breach of our agreement. His voice hardened. Sue me. Lucia moved to stand beside me. But the demolition isn't happening tomorrow. Marcus studied us, calculating. This is disappointing, Lucia. I thought you understood what was at stake. He turned to one of his associates. Call Judge Wilson. Tell him we need to discuss the Maple Street project. My stomach dropped. Of course he had a judge in his pocket. While you're making calls, Aiden said, holding up his phone, you should know I'm on with Diane from the Tribune. She's very interested in how demolition permits for a historically protected property were expedited through the system. Marcus's face darkened. You're bluffing. Want to find out? Aiden put the phone on speaker. Diane, you still there? Yes, a woman's voice replied. And I'm recording, Mr. Davis. You were saying about the Maple Street Historical Covenant? The room fell silent. Marcus stared at Aiden, then at me, then at Lucia. This isn't over, he said finally. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I stepped forward, I think we do. A developer willing to falsify documents, bribe officials, and bully property owners to get what he wants. You can't prove any of that. We don't have to. I gestured to Aiden's phone. We just have to raise enough questions to trigger an investigation. How many city officials were expediting permits for you, Marcus? How many judges? His jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. No, Lucia said quietly. The mistake was thinking we could build something worthwhile by destroying what matters to people. Marcus turned to her, betrayal flashing in his eyes. After everything I've done for you, you've done nothing for me, she cut him off. You used me for my connections, just like I used Louisa for her trust. We were both wrong. He stared at her for a long moment, then at me. Fine. Have your little victory today. But remember, people like me always win in the end. With that, he turned and stalked out, his associates hurrying after him. As the front door slammed, my knees nearly buckled. Aiden ended the call and caught my arm. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. Did we just win? For now, he said, but he's right. This isn't over. What happens next? I asked, looking between them. Lucia picked up the property documents from the chair. We file these with the Historical Society, get that emergency injunction, and then, she hesitated, then we figure out what to do with this house. We? I raised an eyebrow. If you'll let me help, she said softly. I know I don't deserve it. The anger I'd been nursing for days still burned, but alongside it was something else, a strange sense of clarity. Standing up to Marcus had felt right in a way that plotting revenge never had. "The foundation still needs fixing," I said finally. "I know a guy," Aiden offered. "Honest work, fair prices." I moved to the window again, looking out at the street. The house across the way, the one Lucia had been watching me from that first day, now seemed like part of another life. "I need to think," I said, "about all of this." "Of course." Lucia gathered her things. "Take all the time you need." As they turned to leave, I called after them. "Wait!" They paused, looking back expectantly. "The historical covenant," I said. "It doesn't just protect this house, it covers the entire block." Understanding dawned on their faces. "The whole development," Aiden breathed. "It can't happen. Not the way Marcus planned." "No," I agreed. "It can't." For the first time in days, I felt something like hope unfurling in my chest. Not because I'd won, but because I'd found my voice, my power. "I think," I said slowly, "we need to call a neighborhood meeting." The community center buzzed with voices as I stood at the podium, surveying the packed room. Every chair was filled, with people lining the walls and spilling into the hallway. Neighbors who'd never spoken were now deep in conversation, united by a common threat. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "As you know, we've called this meeting to discuss the future of our neighborhood." From the front row, Iris gave me an encouraging nod. Beside her sat Milena, who'd helped organize this gathering, reaching out to her network of local activists and historians. Aiden stood at the back, arms crossed, watching the crowd's reactions. Lucia was conspicuously absent. 3 days ago, we obtained an emergency injunction, stopping the demolition of properties on Maple Street. I continued. But that's just a temporary measure. Marcus and his development company will fight back. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone knew Marcus's reputation, his connections. "What they don't know," I said, pulling out a folder, "is that we have options they never considered." I outlined the plan we'd developed. A community land trust that would purchase properties from willing sellers at fair market value, preserving the historic character while allowing for sensible renovations and improvements. The historical covenant would be our legal foundation, but community ownership would be our strength. "This isn't just about stopping a developer," I explained. "It's about taking control of our neighborhood's future." Questions came rapid fire. How would it be funded? Who would manage the trust? What about homeowners who wanted to sell? I answered each one, drawing on research I'd done with Milena and the legal framework Aiden had helped develop. With each response, I felt more certain, more in command. This was what I'd been searching for all along, not just a house, but a home. A place where I belonged, where my voice mattered. As the meeting wound down, people approached with offers of help, expertise, and funding. A local attorney volunteered legal services. A retired architect offered to assess properties. A group of young professionals pledged to create a website and social media campaign. "You did good," Milena said, squeezing my arm as the crowd thinned. "I'm proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied. "Any of you." "Actually, you could have." Aiden joined us. "That's what you never realized, Lou. You've always had this in you." I was about to respond when the community center door opened and Lucia walked in. The room quieted immediately, all eyes turning toward her. She looked different, less polished, more authentic. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her usual designer clothes replaced by jeans and a sweater. "Sorry I'm late," she said, approaching slowly. "I had something to finish." I met her halfway. "I didn't think you were coming." "I almost didn't." She handed me an envelope. "But you needed to see this." Inside was a legal document, a deed transfer, for the house on Maple Street. My name was listed as the new owner. "I don't understand," I said, looking up at her. "It's yours," she explained. "No strings attached. I've signed it over to you completely." "But the foundation?" Is being repaired. She smiled faintly. Consider it part of my apology. The room had emptied now, leaving just the two of us in the center, Aiden and Milena watching from a respectful distance. Why? I asked simply. Because you were right. Lucia's composure cracked slightly. About all of it. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but I was controlling you, just like my mother, I finished. And yours, she added quietly. We both grew up with mothers who thought they knew best, who made our decisions for us. I swore I'd never be like that, and then I became exactly what I hated. The revelation hit me with unexpected force. Lucia's controlling mother had been a constant topic during our college years. How different she was from my own passive, distant one. Yet somehow we'd both ended up in the same pattern. The house is just a house, Lou, she continued. What matters is that you get to decide what happens to it. Renovation, demolition, selling it to the land trust, whatever you choose. And Marcus? We'll have to find another project. A hint of her old confidence returned. I've withdrawn my investment, and I've provided some interesting documents to the district attorney about his permitting practices. I stared at the deed in my hands, emotions swirling. This was what I'd wanted. My house, my choice. Yet it felt different now. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I said honestly. I know, she nodded. I'm not asking for that. Just for the chance to earn back your trust someday. She turned to leave, but I caught her arm. The neighborhood meeting next week, I said. We could use someone with your financial expertise. If you're interested. A careful smile. I'll be there. After she left, I walked to the window, watching as she crossed the parking lot. Aiden joined me, his reflection appearing beside mine in the glass. You okay? He asked. Getting there. I tapped the deed against my palm. I own a house. With a cracked foundation, he reminded me. Don't we all? I said, and he laughed. Outside, the sun was setting over the neighborhood. My neighborhood. The houses stood solid against the darkening sky, each with its own history, its own stories. Including mine now. I folded the deed and placed it in my bag. Tomorrow, I'd file the paperwork, make it official. Tomorrow, I'd start planning the repairs, the renovations, the future. But tonight, I just wanted to stand here and breathe, feeling the weight of ownership, not just of a house, but of my choices, my path forward. Ready to go home? Aiden asked. I nodded, suddenly certain. Yes, but not to the blue house, not yet. Some dreams change shape when you hold them in your hands. Some foundations need more than concrete to be truly solid, and some houses become homes only after you've fought for them, not against others, but against the parts of yourself that settled for less than you deserved.
The sound of children laughing should have been cheerful, but all I could hear was the ticking time bomb of my mother's expectations. I stood in my niece's backyard, clutching a perfectly wrapped gift box containing the latest Nintendo Switch, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Nothing ever was. I'm Meredith, and I've spent the last 15 years being my family's ATM. Aunt Mary! Zoe came running, her princess dress trailing behind her. You came! She crashed into my legs, and for a moment, everything felt worth it. Her 8th birthday party was in full swing, with balloon animals and face-painting stations dotting the lawn. Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart. I handed her the gift, and her eyes lit up. Before she could tear into it, my brother Cade appeared, looking sharp in clothes I probably paid for. Hey, sis, he said, that familiar gleam in his eye. Mom's looking for you. Of course she was. I'd been dodging her calls all week, ever since she'd dropped hints about Cade's latest temporary setback. I'd prepared for this moment for months, but my hands still trembled as I smoothed down my dress. Zoe, honey, why don't you go show your friends your new face paint? Cade suggested, and she skipped away, the gift forgotten on a nearby table. I spotted Mom by the refreshment table, arranging cupcakes with military precision. Dad hovered nearby, pretending to be absorbed in his phone. Some things never change. Meredith, finally. Mom's voice carried that edge I knew too well. We need to discuss something important. Mom, this is Zoe's party. Can't it wait? It absolutely cannot. She grabbed my elbow, steering me toward the house. Cade's in trouble. I pulled away. When isn't he? This is serious. Her eyes narrowed. The bank's threatening foreclosure on his house. Zoe could lose her home. And there it was, the emotional ammunition she always used. How much? I asked, though I already knew. 75,000. She said it like she was asking to borrow $5. You have that much in savings. I checked your account statement when I was at your house last week. My blood ran cold. You went through my personal papers? Family has no secrets, she declared. Cade needs this. Zoe needs this. I looked across the yard where my niece was getting a butterfly painted on her cheek, blissfully unaware of the adult's drama. What Mom didn't know was that I'd moved my money 3 months ago, after finding her snooping in my home office. I can't help this time, I said firmly. Mom's face darkened. Can't or won't? Both. Everyone! Mom's voice carried across the yard, making heads turn. I need your attention, please. Oh, God, she wouldn't. Our Meredith here, she announced, has decided that her own niece isn't worth helping, that her own brother should lose his home. The party went silent. Even the face painter stopped mid-butterfly. Mom. Cade stepped forward, looking uncomfortable for once. Not here. No. Everyone should know what family means to some people. She was building steam now. After everything we've done for you, Meredith, after all the sacrifices, I felt a calm settle over me, the kind that comes with absolute certainty. What sacrifices, Mom? The college fund you used for Cade's failed restaurant? Or maybe the inheritance from Grandma that mysteriously went to his investment opportunity? Dad finally looked up from his phone. Sophia, perhaps we should— No, Ralph. She needs to understand her responsibility. Mom turned back to me. You will help your brother. You will write that check today. I smiled, and I saw uncertainty flicker in her eyes. No, Mom. I won't. Your account is empty, I finished for her. Has been for months. You taught me well about family having no secrets, so I made sure to protect mine. The silence that followed was deafening. Cade's face had gone pale, and Mom looked like she'd been slapped. In the background, Zoe's laughter floated across the yard, a reminder of innocence in the middle of our adult warfare. You ungrateful! Mom started, but I cut her off. I think it's time for cake, I announced loudly, plastering on a smile. Zoe, sweetie, ready for your birthday song? As children rushed toward the cake table, I caught Dad's eye. He gave me the smallest nod, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone in this family circus. The war had begun, but at least now I was fighting on my own terms. The party aftermath left a bitter taste that even birthday cake couldn't mask. I sat in my car outside Cade's house, watching the last guests leave, when a tap on my window made me jump. Dad stood there, his weathered face tight with concern. Mind if I join you for a minute? I unlocked the passenger door, and he slid in with a heavy sigh. We sat in silence, watching Mom direct the cleanup effort like a general commanding troops. Remember when Cade crashed my first car? I asked. Dad winced. The blue Toyota. 3 weeks after I bought it, I'd saved for 2 years working at that coffee shop. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Mom made me give him my insurance money so he could buy his own car instead. Meredith. I was 18, Dad. My first real purchase, and you both acted like I was selfish for being upset. He rubbed his face. We made mistakes. Made? Present tense. You're still making them. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my photos until I found what I wanted. Look at these. Dad squinted at the screen. Credit card statements, loan applications, all with his signature. All for Cade. Mom forged these, I said quietly. I found them when I was helping organize your office last month. His face went ash gray. That's not possible. The bank called me last week. They wanted to verify your signature on Cade's new loan application. Apparently, I'm listed as your financial advisor. I laughed without humor. Funny, since I never agreed to that. A knock on my window made us both jump. Cade stood there, his charm turned up to full wattage. Family meeting inside, he announced. Mom's orders. Dad and I exchanged looks before following Cade into the house. The living room still bore traces of the party, deflating balloons, scattered wrapping paper, the remnants of childhood joy now tainted by adult drama. Sit down, everyone. Mom stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. We need to discuss Meredith's behavior today. My behavior? I remained standing. Let's discuss fraud instead. Cade's head snapped up. What? Show him, Dad. I nodded toward my father. Show him the signatures Mom's been forging. That's ridiculous, Mom scoffed, but her face had lost some color. Ralph, tell her she's being dramatic. Dad stayed silent, studying his hands. Where's Zoe? I asked suddenly. Upstairs, watching her new Switch, Cade replied. Look, sis, about the money. The money you need because you took out a third mortgage, or because of the gambling debts? His face went blank. How did you— I'm an accountant, Cade. Did you think I wouldn't notice the patterns? The late-night casino withdrawals? The payday loans? Mom stepped between us. That's enough! Your brother made some mistakes, but he's family. We support family. No, Mom. You support Cade. The rest of us just pay for it. I turned to my brother. Tell her about the inheritance. Cade, Mom warned, but he was already talking. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, he said quickly. I just needed startup capital for the food truck business, once it took off. That was my inheritance too. I cut in. Grandma left it for both of us. But somehow, the paperwork only had your name when it came time to distribute. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Your grandmother understood family loyalty. Did she understand identity theft? I pulled out another document. Because using my social security number to open credit cards is illegal, Mom, even if you're family. The room went deadly quiet. Even the sound of Zoe's video game upstairs seemed muted. You wouldn't, Mom whispered. I already did. My voice shook slightly. The police have copies of everything. They're investigating the fraud. I filed the report last week. Cade collapsed onto the couch. Jesus, Mary. I gave you chances, both of you, so many chances. I looked at each of them in turn. But you took everything. My savings, my inheritance, my credit, my trust. We can fix this, Mom said desperately, as a family. We're not a family, I interrupted. We're a pyramid scheme with Christmas dinner. Dad finally spoke. What do you want, Meredith? I want what's mine. I want my life back. I headed for the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. And I want you all to face what you've done. The police will be in touch. You'll regret this, Mom called after me, when your brother loses everything. He already has everything, Mom. Everything that was mine. I opened the door. Now he gets to learn what earning it feels like. I left them there, surrounded by birthday party debris and the wreckage of their own making. In my rearview mirror, I watched Dad sink onto the porch steps, head in his hands, while Mom's silhouette paced behind the living room curtains. The truth was out. Now came the storm. 3 days after the birthday party explosion, my phone buzzed with messages I refused to read. Instead, I sat in my lawyer's office, watching Sarah review the stack of documents I'd collected over the years. This is extensive, she said, flipping through another page. Your mother was thorough, I'll give her that. Thorough at stealing from me. I picked up my coffee, now cold. What's the next step? Before Sarah could answer, my phone lit up with Dad's face. 10th call today. You should answer it, Sarah suggested. Document everything. I put the phone on speaker. Hi, Dad. Meredith, please. His voice cracked. Your mother's not eating. Cade's talking about moving across the country with Zoe. We need to talk about this. I'm with my lawyer right now, I said. You're welcome to join us. A long pause. A lawyer? Really? Really? We're discussing the identity theft, the forged signatures, and the misappropriated inheritance. Your Aunt Carol called, he said, changing tactics. She's furious about what this will do to the family name. Sarah raised an eyebrow at me. The family name? I laughed. Tell Aunt Carol to check her credit reports. Mom's been opening cards in her name too. The silence on the other end was deafening. I'll text you the lawyer's address, I said. Come alone, or don't come at all. After hanging up, Sarah leaned forward. Your aunt might want to join the complaint. It would strengthen the case. Trust me, once Carol starts digging... My phone buzzed again. A text from Cade. Need to see you. Bringing Zoe, please. Sarah saw my hesitation. Meeting in a public place might be wise. Witnesses. An hour later, I sat at a coffee shop downtown, watching Zoe color while Cade stirred his 4th sugar into his coffee. You look terrible, I said. He did. His designer clothes were wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. Mom's losing it, Mary. She burned all her papers last night. Dad had to call the fire department. Destroying evidence is a crime. It's Mom, he emphasized, like that explained everything. Maybe once it did. Aunt Mary, look. Zoe held up her drawing, a family of stick figures. That's you and Daddy and Grandma and Grandpa and me. It's beautiful, sweetheart. I smiled at her, then turned back to Cade. Why are you here? He glanced around before lowering his voice. I need help getting out. Really out this time. Right. I'm serious. He ran a hand through his hair. I found a job in Seattle. Tech company, entry level. It's not much, but you need money to move. I stood up. We're done here. No, wait! He grabbed my wrist. I don't want money. I want to make a statement. About Mom. About everything. I sat back down slowly. What kind of statement? I'll testify. About the fraud, the forgeries, all of it. I kept records too, you know, just in case. Just in case he needed leverage, he meant. Classic Cade. Why should I believe you? He looked at Zoe, still absorbed in her coloring. Because I want her to have at least one parent she can be proud of. Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the coffee shop. There you are! Mom stood at our table, face flushed. Several customers turned to stare. Mom, not here, Cade warned, but she was already launching in. Secret meetings now? Plotting against your own mother? She grabbed Zoe's drawing, turning it over. Look at this! A happy family! Is this what you want to destroy, Meredith? Grandma, you're squishing my picture, Zoe said quietly. I stood up again. Mom, leave. Now. Or what? You'll call the police? Go ahead. She was causing a scene now, her voice rising. Tell them how you abandoned your family. Tell them how you... Ma'am? A barista approached. I need to ask you to leave. This is a family matter. Mom. Cade stood too. Stop, please. She turned on him, eyes wild. You too. My own son. Security's on their way, the barista warned. Mom grabbed her purse, hands shaking. You'll regret this, both of you, when the family falls apart. The family's already apart, I said quietly. You broke it. Piece by piece, lie by lie. She left just as security arrived, nearly knocking over a display of travel mugs. The coffee shop slowly returned to its quiet murmur. Cade sat heavily in his chair. I'll do it. Whatever you need. Statements, testimony, everything. I looked at Zoe, who had tears in her eyes. Hey, sweetie, want to get a hot chocolate? She nodded, and I signaled the barista. Okay, Cade, I said finally. Let's talk about Seattle. The pieces were moving now, falling into place like a long-delayed justice. But looking at Zoe's crumpled drawing, I wondered what the real cost would be. The police station's fluorescent lights made everyone look sickly. I sat across from Detective Morris, watching her review Cade's statement. Your brother's testimony is illuminating, she said, closing the folder, especially regarding the gambling debts. I told you there was more to it. Much more. She tapped her pen against the desk. Your mother's been busy. We've identified 7 other victims in the family, including your Aunt Carol. A knock interrupted us. Dad stood in the doorway, looking older than I'd ever seen him. May I join? He asked quietly. Detective Morris gestured to the empty chair. Dad sat down, his hands trembling slightly as he pulled out a manila envelope. I found these in your mother's secret filing cabinet. He spread out documents across the detective's desk. Bank statements, loan applications, credit card bills, all with forged signatures. Ralph, Detective Morris leaned forward. You understand this implicates you as well, as a potential co-conspirator? I know. He met my eyes. That's why I'm here, to make it right. My throat tightened. Dad! I was a coward, he said. I saw what was happening. Watched your mother drain your accounts, steal your inheritance. I told myself it was for family, but... He wiped his eyes. I just didn't want to face it. My phone buzzed. A text from Cade. Mom knows. She's on her way. We need to hurry. I showed the detective the message. Officers are already stationed outside, she assured me. Your mother won't... Ralph! Mom's voice echoed through the station. How dare you? She burst into the office, mascara streaked down her face. 2 officers followed close behind. Ma'am, this is a restricted area. These are my children. She pointed at me. That ungrateful daughter turned my son against me, and now my husband, Mrs. Armstrong. Detective Morris stood. You need to leave, or you'll be arrested. Arrested? Mom laughed hysterically. For protecting my family, for helping my son. For fraud. I said quietly. For theft. For forging documents. Everything I did was for this family. No. Dad's voice was firm for the first time I could remember. Everything you did was for Cade, and you used our daughter to do it. Mom's face crumpled. Ralph, please, we can fix this. Fix what? I stood up. The credit cards you maxed out in my name, the loans you forged, or maybe Aunt Carol's retirement fund you emptied. Carol? Mom's voice wavered. How did you— She's here too, Detective Morris said, down the hall, giving her statement. Mom sank into a chair, her designer purse sliding to the floor. You don't understand. Cade needed consequences, Dad cut in. Instead, you taught him that money appears magically, that problems disappear if you take from others. Officers? Detective Morris nodded, and they stepped forward with handcuffs. No, Mom whispered. No, you can't. I'm family. I'm your mother. Sophia Armstrong, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and financial exploitation, Detective Morris recited. You have the right to remain silent. I watched them lead her away, her protests fading down the hallway. Dad's hand found mine, squeezing gently. What happens now? He asked. Now. Detective Morris gathered the documents. We build our case. Your wife's looking at serious charges. Years, potentially. My phone buzzed again. Cade. Signed the lease in Seattle. Zoe's excited about her new school. And Cade? Dad asked, reading over my shoulder. He's cooperating, I said. In exchange for immunity, he'll testify about everything. Dad nodded slowly. Good. It's time we all face the truth. Detective Morris handed me a card. The victim support group meets Thursdays. Financial abuse in families. It's more common than you'd think. I pocketed the card as we walked out. In the parking lot, Dad stopped by his car. I listed the house, he said. Getting my own apartment next month. Dad, you don't have to— Yes, I do. He straightened his shoulders. I enabled her for 30 years. Watched her hurt you, hurt others. No more. I hugged him, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave. Where will you go? There's a complex near your place. Thought maybe we could have coffee sometimes. Start over? I'd like that. As I drove home, my phone lit up with a photo from Cade, Zoe in front of their new apartment building in Seattle, grinning and holding up a peace sign. Maybe we were all starting over. Different cities, different lives, but maybe something better, something honest. The truth had torn us apart, but perhaps that's what we needed all along. The courthouse loomed before me, all stone and stern angles. 6 months had passed since Mom's arrest, and today was her sentencing hearing. I adjusted my blazer, checking my reflection in the car window. Ready? Aunt Carol appeared beside me, her normally perfect makeup subdued today. As I'll ever be. Inside, the courtroom filled quickly. Family members I hadn't seen in years filtered in. Cousins, uncles, aunts. Some nodded at me, others turned away. The divide was clear. Those Mom had stolen from, and those who thought family loyalty should trump everything. Dad sat in the front row, directly behind the prosecutor's table. I joined him, Aunt Carol on my other side. Cade's flight landed, I whispered. He's on his way. Dad nodded, his knuckles white as he gripped the bench. How's Zoe? Loving Seattle. First grade's going well. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. All rise. Mom entered in handcuffs, wearing a navy dress that hung loose on her frame. Prison hadn't been kind to her. Her eyes found mine, pleading, but I looked away. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, reviewed the papers before her. "Quite the case we have here," the prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the state has documented over 30 instances of fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. The defendant systematically targeted her own family members, stealing approximately $847,000 over 12 years. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even I hadn't known the total amount. "The state recommends 8 years, given the scope and nature of the crimes." Mom's lawyer rose next. "Your Honor, my client understands the gravity of her actions. She acted out of maternal instinct, trying to help her son." "By stealing from her daughter?" The judge interrupted. "By draining her sister-in-law's retirement fund?" "She's willing to make restitution." "With what money?" Aunt Carol muttered beside me. The judge held up her hand. "Before I hear from the defendant, I understand several victims wish to speak." I stood first, walking to the podium. Mom's eyes followed me, brimming with tears. "My mother taught me about family," I began, my voice steady. "She taught me that love means sacrifice. What she really taught me was that love, in her world, meant control, meant ownership." I gripped the podium tighter. "She didn't just steal my money. She stole my trust, my credit score, my future. She stole years of my life that I spent working extra hours, taking side jobs, trying to fill a hole she kept digging deeper." The courtroom door opened, and Cade slipped in, taking a seat in the back. "I don't want revenge," I continued. "I want justice. I want her to understand that real love doesn't take. It gives. It builds. It doesn't destroy." More victims spoke. Aunt Carol about her emptied retirement account. Cousin Rachel about the student loans taken out in her name. Each story added another brick to the wall of Mom's crimes. Finally, Mom herself stood to speak. "My children were everything to me," she began, voice trembling. "When Cade needed help, Mrs. Armstrong," the judge cut in, "your son didn't need help. According to these records, he was receiving money for gambling, failed business ventures, and luxury purchases. Meanwhile, your daughter was working 60-hour weeks to support herself after you drained her accounts." "I was protecting my family!" "No." The judge's voice hardened. "You were stealing from your family. There's a difference." Mom sank back into her chair, shoulders shaking. Given the systematic nature of these crimes, the breach of trust, and the significant impact on multiple victims, the judge continued, "I sentence you to 7 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay restitution of $847,000 plus interest." The gavel struck with finality. As officers led Mom away, she called out, "Meredith, please, I'm your mother." I stayed seated, Dad's arm around my shoulders, until she was gone. In the courthouse hallway, Cade approached cautiously. Hey, yourself." I studied him. He looked different, cheaper clothes, but somehow more substantial. "How's the new job?" "Tech support's not glamorous, but it's honest work." He shuffled his feet. "Listen, I've been seeing a therapist, working through stuff. She thinks Mom might have narcissistic personality disorder." "Doesn't excuse what she did." "No," he agreed. "Nothing does, but I'm learning to recognize the patterns, in her, in me." Dad joined us, his face tired but relieved. "Dinner? All of us?" I looked at our small group. Dad, Aunt Carol, Cade, me, what remained of our family after the storm. "Yeah," I said. "Dinner sounds good." As we walked out into the afternoon sun, my phone buzzed with a text from my victim support group. Proud of you. Standing up to family is the hardest battle. They were right. But standing up for yourself? That's how you win the war. 1 year after Mom's sentencing, I sat across from my financial advisor, reviewing the damage report. Your credit score's finally back above 700, Marcus said, sliding a document across his desk. The fraud alerts have been cleared, and the last of the false accounts are closed. What about the restitution payments? He shook his head. Nothing yet. Your mother's prison job pays minimum wage, and most of that goes to basic necessities. My phone lit up with Dad's message. Cade called. You should come over. We're done here, I told Marcus, gathering my papers. Thanks for everything. 20 minutes later, I pulled up to Dad's apartment complex. He'd downsized dramatically after selling the house, but the small one-bedroom suited him. I found him on his balcony, watering his new herb garden. What's the emergency? He pointed to his laptop. Cade's on video chat. My brother's face filled the screen, looking worried. Mary, thank God. We have a problem. When, don't we? It's Mom. She's been writing letters to Zoe. My stomach dropped. What kind of letters? Guilt trips. Telling her how lonely she is, how her family abandoned her. She sent one to Zoe's school yesterday. How did she get the school's address? Aunt Susan, Dad said grimly. She's been helping your mother stay connected with her granddaughter. I cursed under my breath. Aunt Susan had always been Mom's enabler. That's not all, Cade continued. Mom's lawyer is filing an appeal. Says she has new evidence that I coerced her into the fraud scheme. What evidence? Doesn't matter, Dad interrupted. The prosecutor called. They found offshore accounts in your mother's name. Significant amounts. I sat down hard. How much? Close to 2 million. Cade's face went pale. That's impossible. She always said she was broke. That's why she needed... To steal from us? I finished. Looks like she was hoarding money while crying poverty. The prosecutor's adding charges, Dad said. Money laundering, tax evasion. They're investigating Aunt Susan too now. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it and felt my blood freeze. You think you've won. Money isn't everything, dear daughter, but family is. Ask Cade about the real reason he left town. Mom. Cade. I held up my phone. What's she talking about? He went quiet, avoiding the camera. Cade. There might be other loans before I left. Under Dad's name. Dad's watering can clattered to the balcony floor. What? I was desperate. The gambling debts. Some people were making threats. Mom said she'd handle it, but she used Dad's identity again. I finished. How much? 300,000. Dad sank into a chair, head in his hands. The retirement account I couldn't access. That's where it went. I'm sorry. Cade's voice cracked. I'm working with the FBI now, telling them everything. Mom had this whole system, connections with loan sharks, offshore accounts. A sharp knock interrupted us. 2 FBI agents stood at Dad's door, badges out. Ms. Armstrong, we need to speak with you about your mother's financial activities. The next hour was a blur of questions, documents, and revelations. Mom hadn't just stolen from family. She'd been running a sophisticated money laundering operation for years, using family members' identities as covers. We're investigating several of your relatives, Agent Torres explained. Your Aunt Susan appears to be a major player. And the letters to my niece? I asked. Witness intimidation. We'll add it to the charges. After they left, I sat with Dad on his balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky orange. I should have known, he said quietly. 35 years of marriage, and I never really knew her. None of us did. My phone buzzed again, Cade sending a photo, Zoe at her school play, beaming in a princess costume. She's happy, I said, showing Dad, away from all this. Think we'll ever be normal? I thought about the support group meetings, the therapy sessions, the slow rebuilding of trust between those of us left standing. Normal's overrated, I replied. I'll settle for honest. Dad smiled slightly, picking up his fallen watering can. Your herbs are dying, I pointed out. Yeah, well, some things you have to let go of to grow something new. He was right. As the sky darkened and city lights began to twinkle, I felt something shift inside me. Mom's empire of lies was crumbling, taking down everyone who'd helped her build it. But here we were. Dad with his struggling herbs, Cade building a new life, me finally free of financial chains. Sometimes family isn't what you're born into. Sometimes it's what you build from the ashes of what burns down. The federal courthouse was bigger than the state one, all glass and steel reaching into the sky. This time, when I walked in, I wasn't alone. A line of family members stretched down the hallway, all of us victims, all of us witnesses. Ready for round two? Aunt Carol squeezed my hand. The courtroom filled quickly. Mom sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her hair graying at the roots. Aunt Susan sat beside her, no longer looking like the polished socialite she'd once been. All rise! The federal judge, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s, wasted no time. We're here for the arraignment of additional charges. Money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy. I tuned out the legal jargon, focusing instead on Mum's face as each charge was read. She didn't look sorry. She looked angry. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we've uncovered evidence of a decades-long financial conspiracy. Mrs. Armstrong and her co-conspirator, Susan Walsh, used family members' identities to funnel millions through offshore accounts. Objection! Mom's new lawyer jumped up. My client was merely trying to protect her family's assets. By stealing them? The judge raised an eyebrow. A commotion at the back of the courtroom drew everyone's attention. Cade walked in, followed by 2 FBI agents. Mom's face lit up. Honey, you came! But Cade walked straight to the prosecutor's table, placing a thick folder down. No, Mom whispered. No, you wouldn't. The witness may approach, the judge instructed. Cade took the stand, his voice steady. For years, I thought Mom was helping me, but she was using me, using all of us. The gambling debts, she introduced me to the bookies. The failed businesses, she sabotaged them to keep me dependent. Lies. Mom stood up, shackles rattling. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing, Cade replied. You stole everything. From me, from Meredith, from everyone. And then you taught me to do the same. Order. The judge banged his gavel. Aunt Susan leaned over to whisper something to Mom, but a marshal stepped between them. Mr. Armstrong, the prosecutor continued, tell us about the offshore accounts. Mom set them up years ago. She had contacts in banking, people who helped hide the money. Every time she stole from family, half went to gambling debts, half went offshore. And Ms. Walsh's role? Aunt Susan managed the accounts. She also scouted new victims in the family, gathered personal information during holiday dinners, birthday parties. I thought of all those family gatherings, how Aunt Susan always seemed so interested in everyone's lives. She'd been mining us for data all along. The evidence mounted: bank statements, wire transfers, secret recordings Cade had made. With each revelation, Mom seemed to shrink smaller, her rage replacing with something like fear. Finally, the judge spoke. Given the scope of these new charges, combined with the existing state convictions, I'm denying bail for both defendants. Your Honor, Mom stood again. My granddaughter needs me. My family. Your family, the judge cut in, is here testifying against you. That should tell you something. He shuffled his papers. Trial is set for 3 months from today. Defendants are remanded to custody. As the marshals led Mom and Aunt Susan away, Mom turned to me. Meredith, tell them I did it for you. No, Mom, you did it for yourself. You always did. In the hallway afterward, Cade looked drained. That was brutal, I finished, but necessary. The FBI says she could get 20 years. Good. Dad joined us, holding his phone. That was the forensic accountant. They found more accounts. The total's closer to 4 million now. Jesus, Cade whispered. They'll seize it all, I said. Maybe we'll finally get restitution. Money's not the point anymore, Dad replied. It's about stopping the cycle. My phone buzzed, a video call from Seattle. I answered to find Zoe's face filling the screen. Aunt Mary! Dad! Grandpa! Look! She held up a report card full of A's. I did it all by myself. That's amazing, sweetheart. Cade's entire face softened. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? Sure, but first... Cade took a deep breath. Remember how we talked about Grandma doing bad things? Well, today we helped make sure she can't do them anymore. Zoe nodded solemnly. Is that why she can't send me letters anymore? Exactly. Good. They made me sad anyway. She brightened. Can we get chocolate sprinkles on the ice cream? We all laughed, the tension breaking like a fever. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. But we slipped out the back, heading to Dad's car. Dinner, he suggested. That new place by the river? Perfect, I said, because that's what family really is. Not the ones who steal your future, but the ones who help you build a new one. The autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee as I sat outside my favorite cafe, reviewing the final restitution paperwork. Mom's offshore accounts had yielded enough to repay everyone she'd stolen from, with interest. The federal trial had ended with a 23-year sentence for her, and 15 for Aunt Susan. Mind if I join you? I looked up to find Rachel, my cousin, holding 2 fresh lattes. Perfect timing. She sat down, eyeing the papers. So, it's really over? Almost. I signed the last document. Just need to file these tomorrow. My phone lit up with Cade's message. Zoe got the lead in the school play. Opening night next week. Coming home for it? Going to Seattle? Rachel asked, reading over my shoulder. Yeah, Dad's coming too. We thought we'd make a weekend of it. Must be nice, having a normal family relationship finally. I laughed. Normal's stretching it. But honest? Yeah, that part's nice. The cafe door chimed, and we both tensed instinctively. But it was just another customer, not Mom's lawyer with more appeals, not another FBI agent with questions. I still flinch, Rachel admitted. Every time my phone rings, every unexpected visitor. The therapist says that'll fade. Eventually. Speaking of therapy, she pulled out her phone, showing me a group chat. Some of us cousins were thinking of starting a support group for family members of white-collar criminals. Bit specific, don't you think? You'd be surprised how many of us are out there. People reached out after the trial went public. Lots of families dealing with this exact thing. I sipped my coffee, considering. What would we do? Share stories, support each other, help people spot the warning signs we all missed. She paused. Maybe even prevent other families from going through what we did. My phone buzzed again. Dad sending a photo of his thriving herb garden, now expanded to tomatoes and peppers. Look at this, I showed Rachel. Remember when Uncle Ralph couldn't keep a cactus alive? People change, she smiled, when you let them. When they want to, I corrected. A notification popped up, an email from the prison. Mom's monthly attempt at contact, right on schedule. I deleted it without reading. Still not talking to her? Nothing to say. I gathered the restitution papers. She had decades to tell the truth. Now she can live with it. Rachel nodded, then brightened. Oh, did you hear about Aunt Susan's daughter? She's working with prosecutors, helping track down other financial fraud rings. Turning poison into medicine? Something like that. We watched people pass by, business professionals, students, families, normal lives untouched by the kind of betrayal we'd survived. I'm buying a house, I said suddenly. The bank approved my loan yesterday. Clean credit score, solid income, everything Mom tried to destroy. That's amazing. Where? That neighborhood by the park. The one Mom always said was beneath our status. Rachel laughed. Perfect. My phone lit up with a video call from Zoe. I answered to find her bouncing with excitement. Aunt Mary, I got my costume. Want to see? Of course. She propped the phone up and twirled in a sparkling dress. I'm playing Annie. Dad says you're coming to opening night. Wouldn't miss it. Is there a song about trust funds in that musical? Mary. Cade's voice came from off-screen, laughing. Just checking. I winked at Zoe. Keep practicing, superstar. After hanging up, Rachel helped me gather my things. Want to grab dinner? The cousins are meeting at that new Thai place. The one Mom would have called questionably authentic. That's the one. I looked at the stack of papers in my bag, the final chapter of Mom's reign over our finances, our choices, our lives. The restitution wouldn't erase what happened, but it marked an ending, and more importantly, a beginning. You know what? I stood up. Let's get really crazy and order the spiciest thing on the menu. Mom would hate that. Exactly. Walking to the restaurant, I felt lighter than I had in years. The autumn air was crisp with possibility, and ahead of me stretched a future unburdened by secrets and schemes. Some people say you can't choose your family, but sometimes, if you're brave enough to face the truth, your real family chooses you. They show up with coffee and understanding, with honest conversations and spicy Thai food, with small victories and new beginnings. And sometimes, they help you build something better from the ruins of what was lost. That's not just karma, that's justice. And it tastes sweeter than any revenge.
I still remember the exact moment I thought I'd finally made it. The boardroom lights bounced off the polished mahogany table as I stood there, 28 years old, and trembling slightly in my carefully chosen outfit that had taken 3 credit card payments to afford. And that's why June's marketing strategy increased our Q3 engagement by 42%. Elaine said, her voice carrying that signature confidence that made everyone lean forward when she spoke. The Harrington account wouldn't have signed without her insights. I felt my cheeks flush as 14 pairs of eyes turned to me. Oscar, our CEO, actually nodded. Not the perfunctory movement he gave most presentations, but a real acknowledgement. I'd spent 3 sleepless weeks building that strategy, testing every assumption, anticipating every objection. "Thank you," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. The data suggested we needed to pivot from traditional demographics to behavioral targeting, and she executed flawlessly. Elaine cut in smoothly, placing her hand on my shoulder. I knew she would. That touch felt like a benediction. Elaine May, the woman who'd climbed from marketing director to COO in 5 years, who wore power like a second skin, whose approval I'd been chasing since I joined the company, was publicly claiming me as her protege. After the meeting, she caught me by the coffee machine, her tailored blazer somehow unwrinkled after a 3-hour session. "Drinks tonight? We should celebrate your win," she said, already typing something into her phone. "I'd love that," I replied, trying not to sound too eager. 8 o'clock, Vantage Lounge. "Wear something that makes you feel unstoppable." She smiled, that rare full smile that transformed her usually calculating face into something almost warm. I spent the afternoon in a haze of validation, fielding congratulatory emails, and trying not to check the time every 5 minutes. Ryder from the creative team stopped by my desk, leaning against it with his usual easy posture. "Quite the victory lap in there," he said, his voice carrying a note I couldn't quite place. "Elaine doesn't share the spotlight often." "I worked really hard on this one," I said, straightening papers that didn't need straightening. "I'm sure you did." He paused. "Just be careful, okay?" I laughed it off. "Of what? Success?" He just shrugged and walked away, leaving me slightly unsettled until I dismissed it as jealousy. Ryder had been at the company longer than me, but hadn't risen as quickly. At 7:30, I was already in an Uber heading to Vantage, wearing the one designer dress I owned, a splurge after my first promotion. The city lights blurred past as I mentally rehearsed casual, clever things to say when Elaine inevitably introduced me to whatever power players would be at her table. My phone buzzed with a text from Peyton. "Get it, girl, but remember who you are." I smiled. Peyton had been my roommate since college and had watched me transform from a nervous marketing assistant to whatever I was becoming. She worried I was changing too much, too fast. Maybe she was right. But tonight wasn't the night for self-doubt. The lounge was exactly as exclusive as its reputation suggested. All dark wood, amber lighting, and people who looked like they belonged in magazines. I gave Elaine's name at the door and was led to a corner table where she sat alone, 2 martinis already waiting. "Right on time," she said, raising her glass. "To your first of many victories." The gin burned pleasantly as we clinked glasses. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, "and for the mentorship. I wouldn't be here without you." "Talent recognizes talent," she replied, her eyes assessing me in that way that always made me feel both seen and examined. "You remind me of myself 10 years ago. Hungry, smart, willing to do what others won't." Pride bloomed in my chest. This was everything I'd wanted since I'd watched her demolish a boardroom of doubting executives my first week. To be seen by her as an equal in the making, not just another disposable team member. "I have something for you," she said, sliding a small velvet box across the table. Inside was a sleek silver pen, heavy and expensive feeling. Engraved along the side, "Ambition is the path to success." "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely touched. "Use it to sign your next promotion paperwork." She winked. "Which reminds me, I sent you an email with some thoughts on the Westridge proposal. Nothing urgent, just review it this weekend." I nodded, already making mental notes to cancel my Saturday plans with Peyton. Later that night, unable to sleep from the lingering excitement, I opened my laptop to get ahead on the Westridge work. Elaine's email sat at the top of my inbox, but it wasn't addressed to me. I was CC'd. The actual recipient was Oscar. Oscar, as discussed, I've developed a comprehensive strategy for Westridge. June has been helping with some of the data collection, but the core approach and execution plan are mine. I've CC'd her so she can begin implementing the support materials we'll need. With this account, I believe we're looking at not just a VP position opening, but a board seat as well. My hands went cold. The strategy she presented today, my strategy, was apparently just the beginning. The Westridge proposal she'd asked me to review was already being positioned as hers. The martini churned in my stomach as I scrolled down to see my weeks of work attached to her email. My name nowhere to be found, except as an implementation assistant. The silver pen suddenly felt like a consolation prize for a theft in progress. I stared at the email until my eyes burned, reading it over and over, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. Sleep was impossible. I paced my apartment, the dress I'd been so proud of earlier now twisted around my waist, my makeup smeared from rubbing my eyes. The silver pen sat on my counter, catching the light every time I passed. Ambition is the path to success. Apparently, so is theft. By morning, shock had hardened into something sharper. I showered, dressed, and arrived at the office an hour early, needing to see what else Elaine had taken from me. The office was quiet, just the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional early bird tapping away in a distant cubicle. I logged into the shared drive, where our team kept project files, and began digging through folders I hadn't opened in months. The Carrington campaign from last quarter, the one where Elaine had praised my supporting work during the client presentation. There it was, my original deck, complete with my notes and research, saved under a new file name, with Elaine listed as the author. The Blackwell proposal that had won us agency innovation recognition. My draft had been polished into Elaine's voice. My market analysis copied wholesale. Even the intern training program I'd developed after noticing our high turnover, rebranded as Elaine's Leadership Initiative. You're in early. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Ryder stood in the doorway of the conference room I'd commandeered, 2 coffee cups in hand. Just catching up on some things, I said, quickly minimizing the screen. He set one of the coffees beside me. Looked like you were hunting for something. I hesitated. Ryder and I were friendly, but office politics made real friendships complicated. Still, his warning yesterday suddenly seemed less like jealousy and more like he'd been trying to tell me something. Can I ask you something weird? I said, accepting the coffee. The Blackwell proposal last spring. Who do you think created it? His eyebrows rose slightly. The one Elaine presented to the board? Yeah. Well, you did most of it, right? I remember you asking me for input on the creative direction. He leaned against the door frame. Why? I took a deep breath. Because Elaine's been taking credit for my work, not just tweaking or supervising, flat out claiming it as hers. Saying it out loud made it real, in a way that churned my stomach. Ryder's expression shifted from surprise to something darker. Show me, he said, closing the door behind him. I pulled up the files, the emails, the presentations. With each example, his jaw tightened. This isn't new for her, he finally said. 2 years ago, it was Lana from product development. Before that, some guy who eventually quit. Elaine finds promising people, mentors them, just enough to extract their best ideas, then discards them when they start asking questions. Why doesn't anyone stop her? Oscar thinks she walks on water. The board sees results. And who's going to believe a junior employee over a COO? He shook his head. I tried to warn Lana. She confronted Elaine directly and ended up transferred to the Cleveland office. My phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Staff meeting in 30 minutes, with Elaine presenting the Westridge strategy. I can't just let her take credit for Westridge, I said, my voice tight. That's months of my work, my research, my ideas. What are you going to do? Stand up in the meeting and call her a thief? Ryder's voice was gentle but firm. You need to be smarter than that. He was right. A direct confrontation would be career suicide. I needed evidence, allies, a plan. But I also couldn't sit through another meeting, watching Elaine build her empire on my foundation. I need to buy some time, I said, more to myself than to Ryder. The staff meeting was already filling up when I arrived. Elaine stood at the front, arranging presentation materials, looking immaculate as always, in a crisp white blouse and charcoal pencil skirt. She caught my eye and smiled, that same mentor's smile that had once made me feel chosen. Now it made me feel hunted. "June, perfect timing," she called. "I was hoping you could help distribute these before we start." She handed me a stack of presentation folders, my Westridge strategy, repackaged with her name on the cover. Our fingers brushed during the handoff, and I had to fight the urge to recoil. "Actually," I said, my heart hammering, "I'm not feeling well. Might be food poisoning from last night." I pressed a hand to my stomach for effect. "I need to go home." Concern flashed across her face. Perfectly calibrated, utterly false. "Oh no, was it something at Vantage?" "Must have been," I replied, matching her performance. "I hate to miss this, but, of course, health comes first. We'll catch you up tomorrow." She turned to the room. "Can someone make sure June gets home okay?" Ryder volunteered, earning a dismissive nod from Elaine. As he guided me out, I felt her eyes on my back, calculating, assessing the threat. In the elevator, Ryder spoke low and fast. "You know she's going to present your strategy as her own today, right? By tomorrow, it'll be official company record." "I know," I said, clutching my bag where I'd slipped one of the presentation folders. "But now I have time to figure out how to fight back." The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out, with one certainty burning through the fog of betrayal. Elaine had taught me, ambition was the path to success. She'd forgotten to mention it was also the path to enemies. Ryder walked me to my car, both of us maintaining the sick day charade, until we were safely in the parking garage. "What's your next move?" he asked, leaning against a concrete pillar. I pulled out the stolen presentation folder. "First, I need to understand exactly what she changed and what she kept. Then, I need to find proof that the original work was mine. And then," I hesitated. The then part was still a blur of rage and half-formed ideas. "I don't know yet, but I'm not letting her get away with this." Ryder shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I want to help, but I need to be careful too. I've got rent and student loans and—" "I'm not asking you to risk your job," I said quickly. "Just keep your eyes open. Let me know if you hear anything useful." He nodded, relief visible in the loosening of his shoulders. "I can do that." At home, I spread the contents of the folder across my kitchen table. The presentation was almost entirely my work, my market analysis, my strategy framework, even my phrasing in some places. Elaine had added an executive summary and reworked the conclusion to emphasize her visionary leadership. I pulled out my laptop and began documenting everything, creating a side-by-side comparison of my original work and Elaine's version. The similarities were undeniable to anyone who looked closely. The problem was getting someone to look. My phone rang. "Peyton, weren't we supposed to meet for lunch?" she asked when I answered. "God, I'm sorry," I said, suddenly remembering our plans. "Something happened at work. Bad enough to ghost your best friend?" "Elaine's been stealing my work," I blurted out. "Everything I've done for the past year. She's been taking credit for all of it." Silence on the line, then, "I'm coming over, and I'm bringing wine." 30 minutes later, Peyton sat across from me, examining my evidence while I paced the apartment. "This is seriously messed up," she said, flipping through the documents. "Have you talked to HR?" I laughed bitterly. "HR reports to Elaine. Besides, it would be her word against mine, and she's been laying groundwork for months, positioning herself as my mentor, making it seem like she's been guiding my work. What about this Oscar guy, the CEO? He thinks Elaine is his golden goose. The company's stock has risen 30% since she became COO. I collapsed onto the couch. I need irrefutable proof that the work was mine before I go to anyone. Peyton topped off my wine glass. "What about your emails, your drafts? There must be a digital trail." I've been working on the company's servers, saving everything to shared drives so Elaine could review my progress. I made air quotes with my fingers, but I might have some early drafts on my personal laptop. I dug out my old laptop, the one I'd used before getting a company computer. It took forever to boot up, but eventually I found what I was looking for: preliminary notes and drafts for several projects, including Westridge, all with metadata showing they were created months before Elaine's versions. "This is good," Peyton said, "but is it enough? Couldn't she just say you were doing preliminary work under her direction?" She was right. I needed something more definitive, something that proved Elaine knew exactly what she was doing. "I need to get into her email," I said, the idea forming as I spoke. Peyton's eyes widened. "Whoa, that's crossing into illegal territory." "Not if I already have access." I explained how Elaine had given me her password months ago to handle some scheduling while she was on vacation. She probably changed it, but she uses variations of the same password for everything. "June, think about what you're saying. If you get caught, if I do nothing, I lose everything I've worked for." My voice cracked. "You don't understand what it's like there. I clawed my way into this position from nothing. No fancy degree, no family connections, just hard work and talent. If I let Elaine take that from me..." Peyton reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I do understand. I've watched you work yourself to exhaustion for this job, but I don't want to see you destroy yourself trying to fix this." I pulled my hand away, suddenly irritated by her caution. "So I should just give up? Let her win?" "That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be strategic. Don't let anger push you into making mistakes." She was right, of course. Breaking into Elaine's email would be a desperate move, possibly a career-ending one if caught. I needed a better plan. "What if," I said slowly, "instead of exposing her all at once, I start by protecting my current work? Create a paper trail she can't erase." The next morning, I returned to the office with a clear head and a strategy. I sent myself emails, documenting my work on ongoing projects, blind copied to my personal account. I started keeping a detailed work journal, and I scheduled a casual coffee with Lana from product development, the previous victim Ryder had mentioned. As I waited in the cafe across from our building, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I heard you're asking questions about Elaine. Check the shared drive. Folder, Board Presentations 2022. Subfolder, Strategy Retreat. Password, Ambition 2022. Be careful who you trust. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend." I stared at the message, my coffee cooling in front of me. Someone else knew what Elaine was doing. Someone wanted to help, or someone was setting a trap. Lana arrived 15 minutes late, her brisk walk and tense shoulders suggesting she'd second-guessed this meeting several times before showing up. She ordered a black coffee and sat across from me, her eyes darting around the cafe as if expecting to see Elaine lurking behind a potted plant. "I can't stay long," she said, not quite meeting my gaze. "Thanks for coming." I kept my voice casual, though my heart was racing. "I wanted to ask your advice on managing cross-departmental projects." Lana's smile was tight. "Cut the bullshit, June. Ryder told me what you're really asking about." I blinked, caught off guard by her directness. "He shouldn't have." "No, he should have." She leaned forward. "Because I wish someone had warned me about Elaine before she derailed my career." For the next 20 minutes, Lana detailed her own experience, how Elaine had mentored her, praised her publicly, then systematically claimed credit for her innovations. When Lana confronted her, Elaine turned ice cold. She told Oscar I was having emotional problems, that I was trying to take credit for her work because I was jealous of her success. Lana's voice was flat, drained of emotion through repeated tellings. 2 weeks later, I was transferred to Cleveland. The official reason was operational needs. But everyone knew. "Why did you come back?" I asked. "Because Cleveland was a dead end, and I refused to let her win." Lana's eyes finally met mine, hard with determination. "I worked my ass off, made connections with board members, and got transferred back when a position opened. Elaine couldn't block it without raising questions. And now we maintain a professional distance. She knows I know, and I know she's waiting for me to make a mistake. Lana checked her watch, which is why this meeting needs to end. Being seen with you right now wouldn't be good for either of us. As she stood to leave, I blurted out, "Did you send me a text about the strategy retreat folder?" Confusion flickered across her face. What text? Either she was lying, or someone else was involved. Before I could decide which, Lana placed a hand on my shoulder. "Whatever you're planning, be careful. Elaine doesn't just fight back, she scorches the earth." With that, she was gone, leaving me with a cold coffee and a colder realization of what I was up against. Back at my desk, I waited until the office cleared for lunch before accessing the shared drive. The folder was buried deep in the archives, and when I entered the password, Ambition 2022, a collection of files appeared. What I found made my stomach drop. Presentations, strategies, market analyses, all created by different employees over the years, all later presented as Elaine's work. My name appeared in several recent documents, but so did Lana's from years ago, and at least 3 other employees I didn't recognize. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was systematic. Elaine had been doing this for years, building her career on stolen work, discarding people when they became inconvenient. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across my screen. Finding anything interesting, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Oscar, the CEO, stood behind me, his expression unreadable. I was just researching past strategies for the Miller account," I stammered, quickly closing the window. "In archived board presentations from 2 years ago?" His eyebrow arched. "I wanted to understand the company's strategic evolution," I said, the lie sounding weak even to my ears. Oscar studied me for a long moment. "My office, 5 minutes." He walked away before I could respond. My hands shook as I gathered my notes. Had Elaine told him I was asking questions? Was this the beginning of my own transfer to corporate Siberia? Oscar's office occupied the corner of our floor, glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city. He gestured for me to sit while he remained standing, looking out at the skyline. "Elaine tells me you're one of our most promising talents," he said without turning. "Says you've contributed significantly to several major accounts." "Contributed," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Now he turned, his expression shrewd. "You disagree with the characterization." It was the opening I needed, but fear closed my throat. This man could end my career with a phone call, yet staying silent meant accepting defeat. "I don't just contribute, Oscar, I create. The Westridge strategy, mine. Harrington, mine. The new engagement metrics we're using, also mine." The words tumbled out, fueled by weeks of suppressed anger. Elaine has been taking credit for my work since I joined her team. I expected denial, dismissal, maybe even anger. Instead, Oscar sighed and sat down heavily. "I was afraid of this," he said quietly. "It's happening again." My breath caught. "You know? I've had concerns about Elaine's management style for some time, but she delivers results, and accusations without proof are just office politics." He fixed me with a penetrating stare. "Do you have proof, June?" I thought of the anonymous text, the hidden folder, my original drafts. "I'm gathering it," I said carefully. "Then I suggest you gather quickly. The board is considering Elaine for a promotion to president next month. If what you're saying is true, I need to know before that decision is made." Hope flared briefly, then flickered as suspicion crept in. Why was he so willing to listen? Was this a trap to see if I'd speak against Elaine? "Why tell me this?" I asked. "Because I built this company from nothing, and I won't have its culture corrupted by theft and fear." He leaned forward. "But understand this, if you're wrong, or if you can't prove your claims, I won't be able to protect you." As I left his office, my phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. "Oscar isn't the ally you think he is. He and Elaine go way back. Be careful what you share." Check her calendar for March 15th. Then look at the company's SEC filings from the same day. The truth goes deeper than stolen presentations. I froze in the hallway, my mind racing. What was on March 15th? And who was sending these texts? The game had just changed, and I wasn't sure if I was the player or the pawn. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning with contradictions. Oscar seemed willing to hear me out, but the text warned he wasn't trustworthy. Elaine was stealing my work, but she'd also championed me publicly. Nothing made sense, and everyone had an agenda I couldn't quite grasp. By morning, I'd made a decision. Trust no one. Verify everything. I arrived at the office early and immediately checked Elaine's calendar for March 15th. Most executives' calendars were visible to their teams for scheduling purposes, though the details of private meetings were often hidden. March 15th showed a 4-hour block marked simply OS Strategy Meeting at a downtown hotel, not the office. No attendees listed, no agenda attached. The company's SEC filings were public record. I pulled them up on my phone, scrolling through dense financial documents until I found what I was looking for, a significant stock sale by both Oscar and Elaine on March 16th, the day after their mysterious meeting. They'd each sold shares worth over $1 million. A week later, our company announced disappointing quarterly results, and the stock dropped 20%. They had sold right before a major downturn. That timing wasn't just convenient. It could be illegal. I was so absorbed in this discovery that I didn't notice Peyton calling until the third attempt. "Where are you?" she demanded when I answered. "I've been waiting at the restaurant for 20 minutes. Shit, I'm sorry. I'd completely forgotten our dinner plans. Something came up at work. Something always comes up at work lately." Her voice carried an edge I wasn't used to hearing. "This is the third time you've bailed on me in 2 weeks?" "I know. I'm sorry. It's just Elaine." "I know." Peyton sighed. "June, I'm worried about you. This vendetta is consuming you." "It's not a vendetta," I snapped. "She's stealing my work, my future. And now I've found something even worse." "What could be worse than her taking credit for your work?" I hesitated, suddenly aware that I was in the office, surrounded by potential ears. "I can't talk about it right now. I'll come over tonight and explain everything." "Don't bother," Peyton said, her voice flat. "I'm going out with other friends who actually show up when they say they will." The call ended before I could respond. I sat there, phone in hand, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. Peyton had been my rock since college, the one person I could always count on. Now she was pulling away, and I couldn't blame her. But I couldn't stop either, not when I was finally getting close to the truth. I spent the rest of the day gathering more evidence, carefully documenting the timeline of Elaine's theft and the suspicious stock sales. By evening, I had a solid case, not just of plagiarism, but potentially insider trading. As I was preparing to leave, Ryder appeared at my desk. "You missed the department meeting," he said quietly. "I was following up on something important." "What did I miss?" "Elaine announced she's recommending you for promotion to senior manager." I froze. "What?" "She sang your praises for 15 minutes, talked about your contributions to Westridge, and how you're being groomed for leadership." His eyes narrowed. It was quite the performance. My mind raced. A promotion would mean more money, more responsibility, more visibility. It would also make me look ungrateful if I accused her now. "She knows," I whispered. "She knows I'm on to her, and she's trying to buy my silence." "Or set you up for a bigger fall," Ryder suggested. "Promote you, integrate you further into her schemes, make you complicit." The elevator dinged, and Elaine stepped out, spotting us immediately. Her smile was warm as she approached, but her eyes were calculating. "June, just the person I wanted to see." She placed a hand on my shoulder. "I hope you don't mind. I made the announcement without you there. I wanted it to be a surprise." "It certainly was," I managed, my face carefully neutral. "We should discuss your new responsibilities over dinner. Are you free tomorrow night?" Her tone made it clear this wasn't really a question. Actually, I have plans with Peyton tomorrow. The lie came easily. But I could do Friday. Perfect. The Capitol Grill at 7. She squeezed my shoulder. I'm so proud of how far you've come under my guidance. Every word was a dagger, but I smiled through it. I couldn't have done it without you. After she left, Ryder whistled low. You should consider acting as a backup career. That was impressive. I learned from the best, I said bitterly. Listen, I need to tell you something, but not here. We walked to a coffee shop 3 blocks away, far enough from the office to be safe. There, I laid out everything I'd discovered: the systematic theft, the suspicious stock sales, Oscar's ambiguous position. Ryder's face grew increasingly grave. June, this is way bigger than office politics. If they're trading on inside information, that's federal territory. I know, that's why I need to be absolutely certain before I do anything. What's your next move? I took a deep breath. I need to access Elaine's emails from March. I need to know what was in that meeting and who else might be involved. That's risky as hell. So is doing nothing. I met his eyes. Will you help me? He hesitated, conflict clear on his face. What exactly would helping entail? I need a distraction, something that will keep Elaine out of her office for at least 15 minutes while I check her computer. The weight of what I was asking hung between us. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. This was potentially criminal activity on both sides. If we get caught, he began. I know, but if we don't try, they win. Again. Ryder was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Friday, during your dinner, I'll create a system emergency that needs her immediate attention. You'll have 15 minutes max. As we parted ways, my phone buzzed with a text from Peyton. I'm still mad at you, but I love you. Whatever you're doing, please be careful. Some things aren't worth the cost. I stared at the message, wondering if she was right. Then I thought of Elaine's smug face, announcing my promotion. A promotion built on my stolen work. And my resolve hardened. Some things were worth any cost. Friday arrived with the weight of inevitability. I spent the day in a state of hyper-awareness, noting every glance, every conversation around me. The office felt like a minefield. One wrong step, and everything would explode. Elaine was in meetings most of the day, which gave me time to prepare. I rehearsed what I would look for on her computer, how quickly I could search her emails, what keywords might yield results fastest. At 6:30, I left to meet her at the restaurant, my stomach in knots. The Capitol Grill was exactly the kind of place Elaine loved. Expensive, exclusive, the kind of establishment where deals were made over rare steaks and $100 bottles of wine. She was already there when I arrived, nursing a martini at a corner table with a perfect view of the room. Power positioning, another one of her tactics. June, she smiled, rising slightly as I approached. You look lovely. Thank you, I said, smoothing the dress I'd chosen carefully. Professional but confident, armor for the battle ahead. We ordered drinks, made small talk about the weather, the restaurant, inconsequential office gossip. All the while I watched the minutes tick by on my watch, knowing Ryder would be positioning himself for our plan. So, Elaine said finally, leaning forward, let's talk about your future. Senior manager is just the beginning. I see a director role for you within 2 years, VP within 5. The path she described was exactly what I dreamed of when I joined the company. Now it felt tainted, built on theft and lies. That's very generous, I said carefully. I'm curious though, what exactly impressed you about my work on Westridge? A flicker of something, caution, perhaps, crossed her face before her smile returned. Your analytical approach, of course. The way you identified behavioral patterns, the competition missed. Interesting. That was actually based on research I did back in February, before you were even involved in the project. Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. We all build on each other's ideas, June. That's how good teams function. I hope you're not suggesting otherwise. Before I could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at it, frowned, and answered. This better be important. What? No, that's not possible. Her voice sharpened. I'll be right there. She hung up, already gathering her things. System crash at the office. The West Ridge presentation is corrupted, and we need it for the morning meeting. She threw cash on the table. Rain check on dinner. We'll continue this conversation Monday. As she rushed out, I felt a surge of both relief and anxiety. Ryder had come through. Now it was my turn. I waited 5 minutes, then took a cab back to the office. The security guard waved me through. I was a familiar face, and plenty of people worked late on Fridays. The executive floor was deserted, except for the sound of raised voices coming from the IT department down the hall. Elaine's office was unlocked. She'd left in too much of a hurry to secure it. I slipped inside, heart pounding so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. Her computer was still on, the screensaver swirling colors across the monitor. I moved the mouse, and her desktop appeared. No password prompt. Another stroke of luck. She must have disabled the automatic lock when she stepped away. I went straight to her email, searching for March 15th. There it was, a calendar invitation from Oscar for the OS strategy meeting, with a note, usual place, bring the Q1 projections, private conversation. Attached was a document labeled Q1 Actual Vise G Projected.xlsx. I opened it and found 2 sets of numbers, the public projections shared with investors and the actual internal forecasts, which were significantly worse. They had known the company would miss its targets weeks before the public announcement. They had sold their shares based on that knowledge. Textbook insider trading. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then searched for any mention of my name. Dozens of results appeared. I clicked on the most recent, from yesterday. Oscar, June is getting too close to the Westridge situation. I'm promoting her to keep her loyal and distracted. If that doesn't work, we may need to consider a restructuring that moves her elsewhere. She's smart, but ultimately replaceable. Let's discuss options at our next meeting. My hands shook as I forwarded that email too. Then I heard it, footsteps approaching the office. I quickly closed everything, slipped behind the door, and held my breath. The door opened, and Lana walked in, her eyes scanning the room before landing on me. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed. "I could ask you the same thing," I whispered back. She closed the door behind her. "I'm the one who texted you, you idiot. I've been trying to build a case against Elaine for months." I stared at her, processing this revelation. "Why didn't you just tell me?" "Because I needed to know if you were serious or just complaining." She glanced nervously at the door. "Did you find anything?" "Insider trading, Oscar and Elaine both, and proof she's been stealing my work." Lana's eyes widened. "We need to go, now. Ryder can't keep her distracted much longer." We slipped out of the office and took the stairs instead of the elevator, emerging on a lower floor where we wouldn't run into Elaine. My heart was still racing, adrenaline making my hands shake. "What happens now?" I asked as we reached the lobby. "Now we take what we have to the board, specifically to Diana, the chairwoman. She's the only one not in Oscar's pocket." Lana's voice was steady, determined. "But we need to move fast. If Elaine suspects anything—" "She already does," I interrupted, showing her the email about my promotion. "She knows I'm on to her." Lana's face paled. "Then we have no time to waste. The board meets Monday morning. We present our evidence then, or not at all." As we parted ways outside the building, my phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. "System issue resolved. Strange that you left the restaurant without paying your share. Even stranger that security reports you entered the building 10 minutes after I arrived. My office, 8 a.m. Monday. Come prepared to explain yourself." I stared at the message, ice forming in my veins. She knew, somehow, she knew exactly what I'd done. The confrontation I'd been building toward was no longer a matter of if, but when. And Elaine had just seized control of the timing. The weekend passed, in a blur of preparation and anxiety. I barely slept, spending hours organizing evidence, rehearsing what I would say, and trying to anticipate Elaine's counterattacks. Lana and I spoke twice, coordinating our approach for the board meeting that would follow my confrontation with Elaine. Peyton came over Sunday night, our earlier argument forgotten in the face of what was coming. "You don't have to do this alone," she said, sitting cross-legged on my couch as I paced the living room. "I'm not alone. I have Lana and Ryder." "You have work allies," she corrected. "That's different from having someone who loves you, regardless of what happens tomorrow." I stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. Her eyes were tired, worried, but unwavering in their support. "I'm scared," I admitted, the words catching in my throat. "What if this backfires? What if I lose everything I've worked for?" "Then you start over," she said, simply. "With me right beside you." I slept fitfully that night, dreaming of boardrooms that stretched endlessly, and Elaine's face multiplying like a hall of mirrors. I woke at 5 a.m., showered, and dressed with deliberate care, a charcoal suit that made me feel armored, hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup. Today wasn't about looking pretty, it was about looking formidable. The office was quiet when I arrived at 7:30, the early morning light casting long shadows across the empty desks. I used the time to set up in the small conference room, where the board would meet at 9 Psi, connecting my laptop to the projector, testing that everything worked. At 7:55, I walked to Elaine's office, my evidence folder tucked under my arm, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the glass walls, I could see her already at her desk, impeccably dressed as always, reviewing documents with the serene confidence of someone who believed themselves untouchable. I knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. "Right on time," she said, without looking up. "Close the door." I did, then remained standing. Refusing the chair she gestured toward. "I prefer to stand." Now she looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Suit yourself. Would you like to explain why you were in my office Friday night?" "No point in denying it. I was gathering evidence of your systematic theft of my work and your insider trading with Oscar. If I expected shock or outrage, I was disappointed." Elaine merely leaned back in her chair, studying me with something like curiosity. "Bold accusation. Proof?" I placed the folder on her desk, but kept my hand on it. "Emails, documents, timestamps, enough to convince the board, which meets in an hour." "The board," she repeated, a small smile playing at her lips. "You think the board will believe a senior manager? Oh, wait. You're not even that yet. Over the COO who's doubled the company's market share. I think they'll believe evidence. And I think they'll be very interested in those stock sales in March." Something flickered in her eyes, the first crack in her composure. "You're making a mistake, June. One that will end your career, not just here, but everywhere. No one hires troublemakers." "Is that what you told Lana and the others before her?" I leaned forward, placing my palms on her desk. "Did you really think we wouldn't eventually find each other, compare notes, realize what you've been doing?" She stood abruptly, her chair rolling back to hit the wall. "You ungrateful little—" She caught herself, visibly regaining control. "I made you. Everything you know about this business, you learned from me." "No," I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "You used me. You used all of us, and now it stops." "This isn't a negotiation," she snapped. "What do you want? Money? A real promotion? Name it. I want credit for my work. I want you to admit what you've done. And I want you to resign." She laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. "Never going to happen." "Then I'll see you in the boardroom." I turned to leave. "June." Her voice stopped me at the door. "Think about what you're doing. Oscar won't let this happen. He needs me." I looked back at her, suddenly seeing not the intimidating figure who had loomed so large in my professional life, but simply a woman cornered by her own deceptions. "Maybe he does, but after the board sees the evidence of your insider trading together, he'll be too busy saving himself to help you." The boardroom was filling up when I arrived. Lana was already there, sitting quietly in a corner, her face a mask of professional calm. Ryder stood by the coffee station, giving me a subtle nod. Oscar entered last, followed by Elaine, both of them radiating confidence that seemed forced around the edges. Diana, the board chairwoman, called the meeting to order. I understand we have an unscheduled presentation this morning. I stood, feeling every eye in the room on me. Yes, I have evidence of systematic intellectual property theft within the company, as well as potential securities violations. Oscar's face darkened. This is ridiculous. We don't have time for— Let her speak, Diana interrupted, her gaze sharp. Serious allegations deserve a hearing. I connected my laptop to the projector and began. With each slide, each email, each comparison of my original work to Elaine's claimed versions, the room grew more tense. When I reached the March stock sales and the internal projections that had been hidden from investors, the silence became absolute. This is absurd, Elaine finally said, her voice tight. These emails could be doctored. This is clearly a vindictive attempt by a junior employee who's angry about— They're not doctored, Lana interrupted, standing. I have copies of the same emails, obtained separately. As do I, came another voice. Ryder stood, holding up a flash drive. Different access point, same evidence. Elaine's face went rigid. She turned to Oscar, clearly expecting him to intervene. But he was staring at the projection screen, the color draining from his face. I think, Diana said into the silence, we need to continue this discussion without Ms. May and Mr. Murray present. Would you both please step outside while the board confers? Elaine stood, her movements stiff. This isn't over, she said, looking directly at me. I met her gaze steadily. Yes, it is. As she walked out, shoulders back, head high even in defeat, I felt no triumph, only a hollow relief that the truth was finally exposed. Diana turned to me after they left. That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I've seen in 30 years of business. Sometimes they're the same thing, I said. She almost smiled. Indeed. Now tell us everything. From the beginning. I took a deep breath and started again, my voice stronger with each word. The weight I'd carried for months was lifting, replaced by something that felt surprisingly like freedom. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, my voice was hoarse, my confidence wavering under the relentless questioning. But the evidence spoke for itself. Undeniable, damning, impossible to explain away. When I finally emerged, the office was buzzing with whispers. Elaine and Oscar had been escorted from the building by security, their personal items to be packed and delivered later. The official story was pending investigation into ethical violations. But the truth raced through the company's gossip channels at light speed. Lana caught up with me at the elevator. Diana wants to see you tomorrow morning. Just you. What about you? And Ryder? We've had our meetings already. She smiled, a genuine expression I'd never seen from her before. I think you'll be pleased with the outcome. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow, drained of the anger that had fueled me for weeks. I walked back to my desk in a daze, unsure what to do next. A small crowd had gathered there. Colleagues with questions, congratulations, confessions of their own negative experiences with Elaine. I answered mechanically, still processing the morning's events. Give her some space, Ryder finally said, dispersing the onlookers. When we were alone, he leaned against my desk. How are you really doing? I don't know, I admitted. I didn't think beyond this moment. That's understandable. It's been all-consuming. He hesitated. Listen, there's something you should know. Something I couldn't tell you before. My guard instantly rose. What? I was on Elaine's list too, 3 years ago, before you joined. A marketing campaign I developed. She took full credit. When I confronted her, she threatened to fire me for performance issues if I pursued it. I stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed, he said simply. I gave up. I let her win. You didn't. The revelation shifted something in me, not just how I saw Ryder, but how I saw myself. I hadn't just fought for my work. I'd fought for everyone who couldn't or didn't. That night, I met Peyton for dinner, bringing a bottle of champagne I couldn't really afford. To justice, she said, raising her glass. To surviving, I countered. We talked for hours, not just about Elaine and the fallout, but about everything I'd been too preoccupied to discuss in recent weeks. Peyton's new project at the gallery, her brother's engagement, the trip we'd been planning before my work consumed me. So what happens now? She asked as we walked back to my apartment. I meet with Diana tomorrow. Beyond that, I shrugged. I honestly don't know. Are you afraid? I considered the question carefully. No, I realized. For the first time in months, I'm not afraid. The next morning, Diana was waiting in what had been Oscar's office. The view of the city spread out behind her. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. The board has voted to terminate both Elaine and Oscar. The SEC has been notified about the stock sales. She gestured for me to sit. We're facing a significant leadership vacuum. I nodded, unsure where this was going. We need someone to take over the marketing department immediately. Someone who understands the projects in progress, who has demonstrated both creativity and integrity. She fixed me with a penetrating look. I'm offering you the position of acting director of marketing. My breath caught. That's a significant promotion. Yes, it is. Too significant, some might say, for someone your age, with your experience level. Her expression was unreadable, which is why it's temporary. 6 months. Prove yourself, and we'll make it permanent. Fail, and we'll bring someone else in. It was both an incredible opportunity and a potential setup for failure. The department was in chaos, morale at rock bottom. Taking over now meant inheriting all of Elaine's problems without her connections or experience. I have conditions, I heard myself say. Diana's eyebrows rose. I'm listening. First, I want Lana transferred back to her original team with a promotion to team lead. Second, I want a full audit of all projects from the past 2 years, with proper credit restored to the actual creators. And third, I took a deep breath. I want a seat at the table when you discuss the company's ethical guidelines moving forward. I expected resistance, maybe even withdrawal of the offer. Instead, Diana smiled. A small approving expression. Done, and done. Anything else? Yes. I want it in writing that I report directly to you, not to whoever replaces Oscar. She nodded. Smart, I was hoping you'd say that. She slid a folder across the desk. The paperwork is already prepared. Take the day to think about it. I didn't need a day. I signed immediately, my signature firm and decisive, in a way it hadn't been before all this began. As I left Oscar's, now Diana's office, I passed the conference room, where everything had come to a head. Through the glass, I could see a maintenance worker removing Elaine's name plaque from the wall. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the promotion. Enjoy it while it lasts. This isn't over. I should have felt frightened. Instead, I felt a strange calm. Whoever it was, Elaine or Oscar, or someone else entirely, they were missing the point. They still thought this was about power, about winning and losing. I deleted the message without responding and walked to what would now be my office. On the desk sat the silver pen Elaine had given me, retrieved from my old workspace. Ambition is the path to success. I picked it up, feeling its weight one last time, then dropped it into the trash. Success wasn't about ambition. It was about creation, integrity, and the courage to stand your ground when the world tried to move you. Elaine had taught me that lesson, just not in the way she intended.
I found it in his suitcase while looking for his passport, a receipt from Tiffany's for a diamond pendant necklace I'd never seen. The paper trembled between my fingers as I stared at the date. 2 weeks ago. Our 5th anniversary wasn't for months. The autumn morning light streamed through our bedroom windows, casting shadows across the cream carpet where Matthew's half-packed suitcase lay open. He was rushing to catch his flight to Chicago, shouting about missing documents from the bathroom where the shower still ran. "Meredith, did you find it?" His voice echoed off tile. I slipped the receipt into my pocket, my heart hammering against my ribs. Still looking. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The necklace cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. In 5 years together, Matthew had never spent that kind of money on jewelry, not even for my engagement ring, which he'd proudly called sensibly elegant when he proposed. I mechanically continued rifling through his belongings, finding the passport tucked beneath a folded dress shirt. The familiar scent of his cologne clung to the fabric, usually comforting, but now somehow cloying. "Got it!" I called out, forcing brightness into my voice. My fingers felt numb. Matthew emerged in a cloud of steam, towel around his waist, water beating on his shoulders. He smiled, that same warm smile that had made me fall for him at that charity auction years ago. "You're a lifesaver, babe." He kissed my cheek, and I fought the urge to flinch. I watched him dress with methodical efficiency. Charcoal suit, pale blue shirt, the silver tie clip I'd given him last Christmas. Each familiar gesture felt like a stranger's movements now. "The Anderson meeting shouldn't run late," he said, checking his phone. "Want to do dinner when I'm back? That new Italian place you mentioned?" "Sure," I said, my voice steady despite the acid churning in my stomach. "Text me when you land?" He was already heading for the door, rolling his suitcase. "Always do. Love you." The front door clicked shut. I waited until his car engine faded before pulling out the receipt, studying it like it might reveal new secrets. The price, the date, the item description that revealed nothing about its intended recipient. My phone buzzed. A text from Noelle. "Coffee? Need your marketing genius for this pitch." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Noelle had been my closest friend since college. She knew Matthew almost as well as I did, or thought she did. "Can't today. Deadline." Another lie, easier than the first. I called the office instead, my voice remarkably composed as I told them I was taking a sick day. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up our joint credit card statement. 3 hours later, my eyes were burning from staring at the screen. I'd found more: dinner charges at restaurants we'd never visited together, a hotel booking downtown on a night he'd claimed to be working late, small purchases at shops I didn't recognize. Each discovery was a fresh crack in the foundation of everything I'd believed about us. My phone lit up with a text from Matthew. "Landed safe. Missing you already." I set the phone face down without responding. The diamond pendant was out there somewhere, probably nestled against someone else's collarbone. Someone who had dinner with my husband at candlelit restaurants while I worked late, believing his excuses about client meetings. The receipt felt heavy in my pocket, a paper weapon that had shattered 5 years of trust in an instant. I thought about confronting him immediately, demanding answers, but something deeper, colder, was taking root beneath the hurt. I opened a new browser tab and typed Tiffany's into the search bar. The pendant would have a serial number, the store would have records, and next week was the annual industry gala, the perfect opportunity to see who might be wearing a brand new diamond necklace. My hands had stopped shaking. The initial shock was crystallizing into something else, a clarity I'd never felt before. Matthew thought he was so careful, so clever with his secrets. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I picked up my phone and opened my calendar, scrolling to next Friday's gala. Time to start planning my outfit. After all, if I was going to watch my marriage implode in public, I wanted to look absolutely devastating doing it. The cursor blinked on the calendar entry as I added a note: "Wear red. Red for rage. Red for revenge. Red for the blood he'd never see coming." The gala invitation mocked me from my desk. Thick cream cardstock with gold lettering, promising an evening of celebration and connection. I'd spent the past week methodically preparing, letting the anger simmer beneath a carefully maintained facade of normalcy. Matthew noticed nothing different when he returned from Chicago. He brought me a box of artisanal chocolates, kissed me like always, and slipped seamlessly back into our routine. Each gesture felt like sandpaper against my skin. "You're sure you want to go tonight?" he asked, adjusting his bow tie in our bedroom mirror. "You've seemed tired lately." I smoothed my red dress, a weapon disguised as silk. "Wouldn't miss it. Besides, the Morrison account team will all be there." I watched his reflection carefully, including Gianna. His hands paused fractionally on the tie. Right, good networking opportunity. I'd spent hours choosing this dress, knowing exactly how it would hit every curve. The neckline dipped just low enough to make the absence of any necklace conspicuous. Let him notice. Let him wonder. The ballroom at the Riverside Hotel dripped with crystal and pretense. I recognized faces from a dozen different firms, all playing the same game of corporate musical chairs. Matthew's hand rested at the small of my back as we worked the room, but I felt each time his eyes drifted away, scanning the crowd. "Meredith!" Gianna's voice cut through the chamber music. She air-kissed my cheek, champagne glass dangling from manicured fingers. "That dress is absolutely killer." I hugged her closer than necessary, noting how she stiffened slightly. "Thanks. Love your necklace. Is it new?" Her hand flew to her throat, to the simple pearl pendant that definitely wasn't from Tiffany's. "Oh, this old thing. Had it forever." Matthew had drifted away, deep in conversation with Patrick near the bar. I kept Gianna close, letting the champagne loosen her tongue. "How's the Morrison project going? Must be intense all those late nights." "What late nights?" She frowned. "We wrapped that weeks ago. Matthew's been focused on the new healthcare client." Ice spread through my chest. He'd used the Morrison project as an excuse for 3 dinner meetings last month. "Of course," I said smoothly. "I must be mixing up projects. Speaking of Matthew, have you met Susan from his team? I've been dying to connect with her about their marketing strategy." Gianna's glass froze halfway to her lips. "Susan? Oh." Her eyes widened with sudden recognition. "You mean Susan from the Chicago office?" The room tilted slightly. "Yes," I lied. "Exactly. I just met her last week when she was in town. Gorgeous woman, has this stunning diamond pendant she was showing off. Said it was a gift from..." Gianna's voice trailed off as she finally registered my expression. Horror crept across her face. Oh God, Meredith, I didn't..." "Excuse me," I managed, turning away. The crowd seemed to pulse around me, faces blurring. I needed air. I pushed through the French doors onto the terrace, gripping the stone balustrade. The night air was sharp with approaching winter. Behind me, the party continued its glittering charade, while my world splintered into before and after. "Meredith?" Patrick's voice. I hadn't heard him follow me out. "You okay?" I turned, ready to brush him off, but stopped at his expression. He knew. Of course he knew. He and Matthew had weekly squash games, drinks after work. How many others knew? How long had I been the only one not seeing it? How long? My voice was barely a whisper. Patrick shifted uncomfortably. "I shouldn't..." "How long?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Since the Chicago merger. About 8 months. 8 months. While I'd been planning weekend trips and talking about starting a family, Matthew had been building a whole separate life. Every kiss, every "I love you," every shared moment had been a lie. "I'm so sorry," Patrick started, but I cut him off with a laugh that sounded nothing like me. "Don't be. I needed to know." I straightened my spine, letting the fury crystallize into purpose. And now I do. I walked back into the ballroom, my heels clicking against marble. Matthew was by the bar, checking his phone, probably texting her, Susan with her diamond pendant and her 8 months of secret dinners. He looked up as I approached, smile faltering at whatever he saw in my face. Everything all right? I took his champagne glass, draining it in one smooth motion. Perfect, I said, setting it down with a decisive click. Everything is absolutely perfect. And it was, in a way, because now I knew exactly what I had to do. I waited 3 days after the gala before calling Noelle, long enough to ensure my voice wouldn't shake. She answered on the first ring. Finally, I was starting to think you'd fallen into a marketing black hole. Can you meet? I kept my tone casual. That new coffee place on Maple? There was a pause. Noelle had known me long enough to hear what I wasn't saying. Give me 20 minutes. The cafe was quiet for a Sunday morning. Noelle took one look at my face and ordered us both double espressos. We claimed a corner table, and I pulled out the Tiffany's receipt, now worn from constant handling. Her eyes widened as she read it. Oh, honey, that's not all. The words spilled out. The gala, Gianna's accidental revelation, Patrick's confirmation. Noelle listened without interrupting, her fingers white-knuckled around her cup. 8 months, she finally said. That absolute bastard. I need your help. I leaned forward. You handle background checks for your firm. I need to know everything about Susan from the Chicago office. Noelle set her cup down carefully. Are you sure that's the right move? Right? I laughed, the sound brittle. Nothing about this is right, but I need to know what I'm dealing with. No, you need to confront Matthew, or talk to a lawyer, or I need to understand exactly what he's built behind my back before I tear it down. The intensity in my voice made a nearby customer glance over. Noelle studied me for a long moment. This isn't you, Mare. The plotting, the revenge. You're better than this. Maybe I'm tired of being better. I pulled out my phone, showing her the hotel charges I'd found. While I was better, he was building a life with someone else. Being better just made me easier to fool. Okay, she held up her hands. But promise me you'll be careful. Whatever you're planning, just be careful. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Because the truth was, I didn't feel careful. I felt like a bomb with a lit fuse, counting down to detonation. Back home, I started my own investigation. LinkedIn revealed a Susan matching Gianna's description, recently promoted to regional director. Her profile showed she'd been in town the same weeks as Matthew's late meetings. Each confirmation was another twist of the knife. I was so focused on my screen that I almost missed the sound of keys in the door. Matthew was home early. Hey, beautiful. He dropped a kiss on my head. Working on a Sunday? I closed the laptop, forcing a smile. Just getting ahead on some things. My heart was racing, but not from fear, from anticipation. How was squash with Patrick? Good match. He's getting better. Matthew headed for the kitchen, but I caught the slight hesitation in his step. Really? Because I ran into him at the grocery store an hour ago. He seemed surprised you hadn't called to reschedule. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Right, sorry. It was tennis with Mark today. I'm getting my days mixed up. I watched him pull out ingredients for dinner, his movements deliberately casual. Every lie now stood out like neon signs. How had I ever missed them? My phone buzzed. A text from Noelle. Found something. Call me ASAP. I need to take this, I told Matthew, heading for our bedroom. Work thing. I closed the door before calling Noelle. What did you find? It's not what I found. It's what I didn't find. Her voice was tense. There is no Susan in the Chicago office. Not now, not in the past year. But Gianna said Gianna met someone who called herself Susan. But whoever she is, she doesn't work for the company. The implications hit me like a physical blow. The lies went deeper than I'd imagined. Who was this woman? What else didn't I know? You still there? Yeah. I sank onto the bed, staring at my reflection in the dresser mirror. A stranger stared back, someone harder, colder. I need one more favor. Can you get me the security footage from the Riverside Hotel, the night of the gala? What are you thinking? Gianna said she met Susan last week. If she was at the gala, my voice hardened. I want to see her face. In the kitchen, I could hear Matthew humming as he cooked, playing his role of devoted husband. Let him pretend. Let him think he still held all the cards. Because now I knew this wasn't just about an affair. This was about a carefully constructed fiction, and I was going to dismantle it piece by piece until nothing remained but the truth. The security footage from the gala filled my laptop screen, ghostly figures in evening wear drifting through the frame. I'd been watching for hours, scrutinizing every woman who approached Matthew. Noelle had pulled strings to get the files, but the image quality was frustratingly grainy. A knock at my office door made me jump. "Come in." Olive from accounting stepped in, clutching a stack of papers. "Sorry to interrupt, but I need your signature on these expense reports." She paused, frowning at my screen. "Is that the gala?" I started to minimize the window, then stopped. Olive had been there that night. "Actually, did you happen to notice a woman talking to Matthew? Tall, dark hair, probably wearing something expensive." Something flickered across her face. "You mean Susan?" My heart stopped. "You know her?" Olive shifted uncomfortably. "I've seen her around. She comes to the office sometimes, usually late afternoons. Always goes straight to Patrick's office." Patrick. Of course. He wasn't just covering for Matthew. He was actively helping him. The betrayal burned fresh. When was the last time? Tuesday? Olive set down the expense reports. "Listen, Meredith, I should have said something sooner. It felt wrong watching them all pretend." "Them all?" The words came out sharp. She sank into the chair across from my desk. "There's a whole group that knows. Patrick, Gianna, some others. They do happy hours at Maxwell's downtown. I got invited once, but it felt, I don't know, like being part of something dirty." My hands were trembling. I'd imagined Matthew's betrayal as something contained, just him and this mystery woman. But this was a conspiracy of silence, a web of complicity that included people I saw every day. "Show me," I said, pulling up the footage again. "Where is she in this?" Olive leaned forward, scanning the screen. "There, by the bar in the blue dress, that's her." I froze the frame. The woman was facing away, but something about her posture seemed familiar. She was talking to Patrick, one hand resting possessively on his arm. "Wait." I rewound further, watching her movements through the crowd. She never fully faced the camera, but her gestures, the way she carried herself. "I know her." "What?" "I've met her before, at the Christmas party last year. Patrick introduced her as his sister." Olive's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Patrick's sister lives in Australia. He talks about her all the time." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Patrick hadn't just been covering for Matthew. He'd been actively creating her cover story, lending legitimacy to her presence. How many other lies had they constructed? My phone buzzed. A text from Matthew. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." I showed it to Olive. "Maxwell's?" She nodded slowly. "Probably. I need a favor." I met her eyes. A big one. 20 minutes later, I watched through Maxwell's front window as Matthew arrived. He headed straight for a corner booth where Patrick was already waiting. No sign of Susan yet. "Are you sure about this?" Olive whispered beside me. I touched the phone in my pocket, recording everything. "Completely." We went inside, choosing a table with a clear view. Matthew's back was to us, but I could see Patrick's face as he looked up and saw us. The color drained from his cheeks. "Showtime," I murmured. I stood, walking deliberately toward their table. Matthew was mid-sentence when he sensed my presence. He turned, surprise flickering across his face before he controlled it. What are you doing here? Funny, I said, my voice carrying. I was about to ask you the same thing. Thought you were working late. I am. Just a quick drink with Patrick to discuss the Henderson proposal. Really? I turned to Patrick. Or are we waiting for your sister, the one from Australia? Patrick's glass slipped, spilling whiskey across the table. Matthew went very still. Meredith, he started, but I cut him off. Just don't. I placed my phone on the table, the recording still running. I want to meet her, the real her, or the next conversation we have will be with HR. The threat hung in the air. Patrick looked between us, panic rising in his eyes. But Matthew's expression had changed to something calculating. Okay, he said quietly. You want the truth? Come back tomorrow night, same time. Why not now? His smile was cold. Because, darling, there are some things you're not ready to hear. I matched his stare. Tomorrow, then. Walking away, I could feel their eyes on my back. Olive waited by the door, concern etched on her face. But beneath the fear and anger, something else was growing. A fierce satisfaction. Because tomorrow, finally, the masks would come off, and I was ready to face whatever truth lay beneath. I spent the day watching the clock, every minute crawling by like honey. Noelle called twice, but I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't handle her concern, her warnings about being careful. Careful was for people who still had something to lose. At 6, I left the office without saying goodbye to anyone. The autumn air had turned bitter, matching my mood. Maxwell's neon sign buzzed in the growing darkness, a red glow that seemed to pulse with my heartbeat. They were already there, Matthew, Patrick, and a woman with dark hair sitting between them. My hands clenched involuntarily as I recognized her profile from the security footage. She looked up as I approached, and the world tilted sideways. Hello, Meredith, said Susan Roberts, my mother-in-law, the woman who had died in a car accident 12 years ago. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. This is impossible. Sit down, Matthew said quietly. Please. I sank into the chair, staring at the ghost across from me. She looked different from the photos Matthew kept. Older, harder somehow, but unmistakably the same woman. You're dead, I managed. He told me you were dead? He told everyone that. Susan's voice was exactly as I'd imagined it from Matthew's stories. It was easier than explaining the truth. Which is? Matthew reached for my hand. I yanked it away. Don't. I had to protect her, he said. After what happened with Dad's company, the investigations, she would have lost everything. The embezzlement scandal. The pieces started clicking together. But that was a cover story, Susan finished. Robert wasn't embezzling. He was gathering evidence against the board. They were laundering money for some very dangerous people. She smiled without humor. Then he had his accident, and I knew I was next. My head was spinning. So you faked your death. Matthew helped me disappear. New identity, new life. It was supposed to be temporary, just until we could prove what really happened. But the deeper we dug, she shook her head. Patrick's been helping, Matthew added. His security clearance gives us access to records we need. We're close to having enough evidence to go public. Close? My laugh sounded hysterical even to me. You've been close for 8 months, while lying to my face every day? I couldn't tell you, he pleaded. It wasn't safe. If they knew you knew. Shut up. I turned to Susan. The necklace, was that some kind of signal? She touched her throat where the diamond pendant hung. A dead drop. The USB drive is inside. Next week's board meeting is our chance to finally expose everything. How convenient. I stood up, my chair scraping back. You know what I think? I think you're both lying. Again. I think this is just another story to cover up whatever's really going on. Meredith, wait. Matthew reached for me. Don't touch me. Several heads turned at my outburst. You let me believe you were having an affair. You let me think I was crazy, paranoid, imagining things. Do you have any idea what that did to me? It was better than making you an accomplice, Susan said sharply. Better than putting you in danger. Better for who? The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. You got to play dead mother-in-law's spy games while I planned our future, while I talked about having children with a man who couldn't even tell me the truth about his own mother. Matthew's face crumpled. I wanted to tell you so many times, but you didn't. I wiped my eyes roughly. And now you never have to, because I'm done. You can't leave, Susan said urgently. Not now. If they think you know something, then what? They'll arrange an accident for me too? I laughed bitterly. Good luck explaining that one to your next wife, Matthew. I turned to go, but Susan's next words froze me in place. They're already watching you, have been since the gala. Your friend Olive, she doesn't work for accounting. She works for them. The room seemed to tilt again. Olive's convenient appearance, her helpful information, her eagerness to assist. You're lying. Check your phone, Patrick said quietly. The recording from last night? It's gone. She took it while you were in the bathroom. My fingers trembled as I pulled out my phone. The recording was gone. All my recent calls, texts, photos, erased. So what now? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Now, Susan said, you sit back down, and we figure out how to keep you alive long enough to finish this. I sank back into my chair, looking at these familiar strangers around me. My husband, my dead mother-in-law, my friend the secret agent. Tell me everything, I said, and this time don't leave anything out. The safe house was a bland apartment in a forgettable building. I sat on a threadbare couch while Susan laid out files across the coffee table, bank statements, emails, surveillance photos, evidence of a conspiracy that had been growing under my feet like toxic roots. The board meeting is in 3 days, she explained. Once we present this, they'll have no choice but to. A knock at the door silenced her. 3 sharp raps, then 2 soft ones. Patrick's signal. But when the door opened, it wasn't just Patrick who entered. Noelle? My voice cracked. What are you doing here? She stepped inside, looking grimmer than I'd ever seen her. Cleaning up a mess. You should have stayed out of it, Mir. Understanding hit like a physical blow. You're one of them. Not exactly. She glanced at Susan. I'm FBI. Deep cover for the past 3 years, investigating the same people you are, until you started poking around and nearly blew everything. I looked at Matthew, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Did you know? Not until tonight, he said quietly. She contacted us after you left Maxwell's. Noelle sat across from me, her familiar face now strange with secrets. Those background checks you asked for? They set off every alarm we had. We've been building this case for years, and suddenly my best friend is digging into exactly the wrong places. Your best friend. The words tasted like ash. Was any of it real? All of it. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. That's why this is so hard. I need you to step back, Mare. Let us handle it. Step back? I gestured at the files. I'm already in it. Olive is being handled, Patrick interrupted. We've fed her false information. As far as they know, you're just a jealous wife chasing shadows. My laugh had an edge of hysteria. That's exactly what I was. Until an hour ago, I thought my husband was having an affair with his dead mother. Keep your voice down, Susan warned. Or what? More accidents? More lies? I stood up, pacing. How many more people are watching me? How much of my life is even real anymore? All of it was real, Matthew said softly. Everything between us. I just couldn't. If you say you couldn't tell me one more time, I swear to God. We need to move, Noelle cut in. They're expecting suspicious activity around the board meeting. We have to get the evidence in place tonight. No. The word surprised even me. Excuse me? I said no. Clarity was crystallizing through the chaos. You don't get to sideline me now. Not after everything. Meredith, Susan started, but I cut her off. They're watching me, right? Expecting the jealous wife act? A plan was forming. So let's give them what they expect. Understanding dawned on Noelle's face. You want to be the distraction. I want to be myself. I turned to Matthew. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to make a scene at your office. A big one. Very public, very messy. The kind of thing a woman who just discovered her husband's affair would do. While we move the evidence, Patrick nodded slowly. They'll be focused on you. It's too dangerous, Matthew protested. More dangerous than letting me stumble around in the dark? I met his eyes. You wanted to protect me by keeping me ignorant. Look how well that worked out. Silence fell as they considered. Finally, Noelle spoke. It could work, but there's no going back after this. Your life as you knew it? My life as I knew it ended the moment I found that receipt. I picked up one of the surveillance photos. At least now I get to choose how it ends. Susan was watching me with new respect. You understand what you're risking? Better than you did when you let me marry your son without knowing the truth. The words hit their mark. She flinched slightly. Tomorrow morning then, Noelle said. 9 a.m.? I nodded, already planning. I'll need my red dress. The one from the gala? Matthew asked. Seems fitting. I managed a bitter smile. I bought it to confront your mistress. Might as well wear it to confront your mother. Later, driving home through empty streets, Matthew tried to speak several times. I kept the radio on, drowning him out. Let him sit with the silence for once. My phone buzzed. A text from Olive. Drinks tomorrow? Need to talk about what happened at Maxwell's. I showed it to Matthew. He tensed. Don't respond. I know how to play my part, I said coldly. I've had plenty of practice. Tomorrow, I would become what they all expected. The hysterical, betrayed wife making a public scene. But behind the performance would be something else. Something harder. Something real. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth, it turns out, was far more dangerous than any lie. The elevator doors opened onto the 32nd floor at exactly 9:07 a.m. My red dress was a battle flag, my heels striking marble like warning shots. Conversations died as I passed. Someone whispered, "Oh shit, good, let them watch." Matthew's office door was closed. Through the glass wall, I could see him at his desk, performing his role perfectly. The unsuspecting husband about to be publicly destroyed. I didn't knock. How dare you? My voice carried across the suddenly silent floor. How dare you sit there pretending everything's normal? He looked up, practiced surprise on his face. Meredith, what are you? Don't. I slammed my hands on his desk, sending papers flying. I know about her, about all of it. Movement in my peripheral vision. Olive appearing in the doorway, phone raised. Recording just as we'd predicted. This isn't the place, Matthew said, standing. Let's talk about this at home. Like we talked about the necklace? I picked up his framed photos, examining them with exaggerated care. Or the late meetings. Or should we talk about your mother? His flinch wasn't entirely acting. Around us, the audience grew. You're upset, he tried. I understand, but I hurled the frame. It shattered against the wall. glass tinkling like wind chimes. Someone gasped. Upset? I laughed, the sound raw. I'm way past upset, Matthew. I'm at the part where I burn everything down. Right on cue, Patrick appeared. Security's on their way. Meredith, you need to leave. Perfect timing. I rounded on him. Tell them about the happy hours at Maxwell's. Tell them what you've been helping him hide. Patrick's face drained of color, also not entirely acting. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of Noelle slipping into the conference room where the board would meet in 20 minutes. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned, until Olive stepped forward. I think, she said quietly, we should all calm down and discuss this privately. Something in her tone made my skin crawl. This wasn't the script. Nothing left to discuss. I moved toward the door, but she blocked my path. Actually, her smile was razor sharp. I insist. The gun appeared so smoothly, it seemed to materialize in her hand. Gasps and screams erupted as people scrambled back. Inside, she gestured to the conference room with the weapon. All of you. My heart hammered as Matthew and Patrick flanked me, moving slowly toward the door. This wasn't part of the plan. Noelle was in there, vulnerable, with the evidence. The conference room was already occupied. 3 men in suits stood around the table. In the corner, Noelle knelt with her hands zip-tied, a bruise darkening her cheek. Quite a performance, one of the men said, examining a USB drive, the one from Susan's necklace. But ultimately unnecessary. We've been ahead of you the whole time. Not quite. The voice came from behind us. Susan stood in the doorway, her own weapon trained on Olive. Drop it. Olive's laugh was cold. Or what? You'll shoot me in front of all these witnesses? They're still filming, you know. She nodded toward the glass walls where horrified faces pressed against the windows. They're filming exactly what we wanted them to film, I said, understanding finally clicking. A disgruntled wife's meltdown or a terrorist attack on a corporate office. The men in suits tensed. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. FBI! The shout preceded a dozen agents flooding the floor. Everybody down! Chaos erupted. Olive spun toward Susan, but Matthew was faster. He tackled her as the gun went off, the bullet shattering the glass behind us. I dropped to the floor as agents swarmed in, their weapons drawn. Clear! Someone shouted. Suspects in custody. Hands helped me up. Noelle, now free, pulled me into a fierce hug. You okay? I nodded, watching as agents led away the men in suits. Olive was being cuffed, her cold mask finally cracking. The evidence? I asked. Safe. Noelle smiled grimly. The real USB drive was never in the necklace. That was just to make them show their hand. Matthew approached slowly, uncertainty in his eyes. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead where he'd hit the ground. I'm sorry, he said softly, for all of it. I looked at him, really looked at him, past the lies and secrets, past the pain and betrayal. He'd tried to protect me by keeping me in the dark. But when it mattered, when the choice was between his secrets and my safety, he'd chosen me. I know, I said, but we're not done talking about this. No, he agreed, we're not. Outside the shattered windows, morning sun painted the city gold. Sirens faded into distance, and in the wreckage of my carefully constructed life, I felt something unexpected taking root. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The hotel suite felt too large, too quiet after the chaos. I stood at the window, watching police lights pulse against neighboring buildings while FBI agents processed statements 12 floors below. Tea? Susan offered from behind me. Something stronger. She poured 2 whiskeys, joining me at the window. We hadn't been alone together since the truth came out. The woman I'd imagined from Matthew's stories. soft-spoken, gentle, bore little resemblance to the sharp-eyed operative beside me. "You could have told me," I said finally, "that night at Maxwell's. You could have trusted me from the start." "Would you have believed me?" "No," I smiled slightly. "But I would have respected the truth more than another lie." She swirled her drink, ice clinking. "When Robert died, I thought I was protecting Matthew by disappearing. Instead, I forced him to carry my secrets, to become like me." She met my eyes. "I never meant for him to do the same to you." "But he did." I turned from the window. "And now what? We all pretend to be a normal family?" "Normal is overrated." Noelle entered, still in her tactical gear. "Besides, you'd be bored. You're one to talk." But there was no bite in my words. The anger that had driven me for weeks felt distant now, replaced by something more complex. "The board members are singing," Noelle continued. "Olive's handler rolled on the whole operation. It's over." "Is it?" I asked quietly. A knock interrupted whatever she might have answered. Matthew stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "Can we talk?" Susan and Noelle exchanged glances before slipping out. The door clicked shut with finality. Matthew stayed by the door, keeping his distance. Smart man. "The papers are ready," he said. "If you want them." Divorce papers. The simple solution. Clean break, fresh start. I'd been so sure that's what I wanted. "Did you ever actually trust me?" I asked instead. "Or was I just another cover story?" "You were the only real thing in my life." His voice cracked. "Every lie I told was because I couldn't bear to lose that." "But you did lose it. The moment you chose lies over truth." "I know." He took a step forward, then stopped. "But maybe we could try truth for a change." I laughed despite myself. "Just like that?" "No." He pulled something from his pocket, the diamond pendant. "Not just like that, but maybe like this." He set it on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" "A choice." He met my eyes steadily. "Inside is everything, every secret, every operation, every lie I've ever told. Read it, destroy it, turn it over to the press. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it." I picked up the necklace, feeling its weight. "And if I choose to walk away?" "Then I'll respect that too." His smile was sad. "But I'm hoping you'll choose to stay. Not for the man you thought I was, but for the man I want to be. The man you make me want to be." The necklace caught the light, scattering diamonds across the wall. So much pain and deception wrapped in something beautiful, like our marriage. "I can't promise forgiveness," I said slowly. "I'm not asking for it, just possibility." I thought of that first receipt, how it had shattered my world, how each revelation since had forced me to rebuild myself stronger, sharper, more true. "Okay," I slipped the necklace into my pocket. "But we do this my way." "Which is?" "First, you're moving out. I need space to process everything without you there pretending nothing's changed." He nodded, accepting this. "Second, we start therapy. Real therapy where we actually tell the truth." "Done." "And third?" I stepped closer, close enough to see the hope and fear warring in his eyes. "No more lies, not even small ones, not even to protect me, because I'm not the woman you married anymore. I'm someone stronger, someone who can handle the truth." "No," he agreed softly. "You're someone who demands it." I reached up, touching his cheek where a bruise was forming from the fight. He stayed perfectly still, letting me choose the contact. "One more thing," I said. "Anything." "That red dress? I'm keeping it. Sometimes a woman needs armor." His laugh was surprised, genuine. "It suits you." I stepped back, maintaining the necessary distance between us. There would be more revelations, more painful truths to face. The path ahead was uncertain. But for the first time since finding that receipt, I felt truly powerful, not because of secrets uncovered or justice served, but because I finally knew who I was. A woman who could face deception and emerge stronger, who could choose truth even when lies were easier, who could wear red not for revenge, but for herself.